Doom dee doo doo doo. 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 You can ponder perpetual motion. Fix your mind on a crystal day. Always time for a good conversation. There's an ear for what you say. Come on the rising wind. We're going up around the bend. Yeah. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Welcome to The Kingless Generation, a podcast on the deep history of class struggle, paleo-parapolitics, and the demonology of capital. I'm your host, Fergal Schmoodlach, and it feels like it's been a while, and at the same time it doesn't. I've been doing a lot of guest spots, different places, so look forward to those. Those are all with people who are much more organized than myself. They live better lives, so those might not come out for a while yet here. But I myself am kind of always just recording. You're basically getting it live half the time. Today it's a very rainy day here in Tokyo. And I hope you've been kind to one another. I hope you've reached out. I hope you've been talking to people. I hope you've been organizing. The best thing is just to speak to your neighbor. And being authentic with yourself and being authentic with the class politics that you see and the vision for the future that you have within you, right? Because that's what we have to spread. Today I have for you a fantastic conversation that I had with a brilliant podcaster named Marcus. Marcus is, a podcaster. He is also a natural farmer. Done natural farming all different places around China. He was also ordained as a monk in the Pure Land school of Buddhism in China, and he has done his natural farming in different places in Europe as well. He's originally from Sweden, but he found his way back to Europe, I think what happened is that he got married to a Japanese woman, and he has now found his way here to Japan. So, and is now podcasting, a brilliant podcast kind of actually on psychology of class struggle and psychology of sort of psychoanalysis of structures of ruling class domination, but also sort of more positive forms of social organization as well. How does that work sort of psychoanalytically? I mean, very much the kind of thing that I'm interested in, but approaching it from kind of a Lacanian psychoanalytical perspective a lot of the time. Also talks a lot about Althusser. So I'm interested in that, that's something that I have been into. I was into that in grad school. I did all the lit crit stuff, from a literature scholar kind of point of view. And then I've put more distance, I've taken more distance from it since then, reading actually Marx and Lenin. So for me, that's maybe something that I've been reevaluating my stance toward. But he is actually doing fantastic stuff with that in the context of different parapolitical history. Talking about how did Jim Jones manage to do what he did? And he brings in all this wonderful archival audio. That's just fantastic, right? Where did his power come from? And like me, Marcus is very interested in sort of what are ways in which more positive actors could access these same sorts of power to bring about revolutionary change in relations of production that would bring us to a more healthy, sustainable human world, like what we know is much more normal, much more than what we have today, this careening hellscape and tidal wave of class struggle that we find ourselves in today. So without further ado, I think let's get right to it for what I hope will be the first of many wonderful conversations here, little wonderful seminar with Marcus of the podcast Return of the Repressed. I think Spotify is the best place to listen to that I see. but here we go. Are you in Kyushu now?
No, 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 no. I think we've decided basically to stay in Nagano. I think we went
Okay.
up to Chino. Uh,
Okay.
do you know where Suva Lake is?
No.
Like the biggest lake in Nagano. It's close to
Okay.
Okaya.
Mm-hmm.
Atsumino maybe it's like the most famous, or Matsumoto. Like there's a castle. You know where the first Aum bombing was? Like before
Oh
they
no,
bombed
I don't know.
yeah, it's crazy. I didn't know that.
Oh.
Somebody told me like that they were gonna set up an interview with me with the police officer who was in charge of the bombing, because it's
Mm-hmm.
strange, right? Like that they didn't really get the connection until like after the Tokyo bombing, even though it was pretty like flamboyantly clear that it was the Aum. I think they even said, we did
Really?
it or something. Yeah,
Oh, they
it was
did
very
claim it.
strange.
Okay. Mm,
That's what I remember.
interesting.
There was a lot of like they at least they suggested I should talk to
Oh.
this police officer and talk to him, because there was a lot of shady stuff like surrounding that whole thing.
Oh, well, that's
And
perfect.
I
You
mean,
can
I
be on the
was
ground. You can actually do the
right.
do the gumshoe
Yeah,
work there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I thought that'd be cool, but I need a translator though. Like I don't speak as
Mm.
good Japanese as you do, so I wouldn't be
You
able to
haven't
talk
been here
about.
very long.
No, I
You have
haven't. So
been you
yeah,
have been
so
all
I'm
over the place.
excused.
So for my listeners, I suppose,
Yeah.
yeah, how do you want to do this? Do you want to like introduce yourself? What explain like what was it that brought you here, and like how are we talking together right now?
Was Keith Allen Dennis, right? Who said it? Like when I did like some rant about like the Halo 2, like not civilization, but like the experimentation with sedentary lifestyle, like in the
Hmm.
north of Israel there, like 20,000 years ago or something.
Yeah.
Um, and I had a small rant about it, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, you seem to like paleo class struggle. Like you should listen to Fergal's show." Like, and then yeah, I was
Yeah,
like, "All
yeah.
right, yeah, yeah."
That's what we do.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Nice.
that's a good. It's your neologism. Like, did you come across that term like in academia? I've never seen it being used
Paleo.
before, but
No, no, I
it's a
think that
it's
might be
a
a neologism.
yeah,
Paleo
it's
parapolitics.
genius.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I kept thinking about this
that's the
moment.
word.
If human beings were at some time just even if we're a violent species, even if we're an animal that, kills each other and whatever,
Kind of
fights over
Hobbesian.
resources. Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's some kind of jump there. There is some kind of
Mm.
moment. I mean, I guess this is the kind of question that the Davids in the Dawn of Everything are keen to disavow. They're keen to disavow the
Right.
idea of any kind of change or beginning
Mm.
of anything. And yet they
Yeah.
sort of say, well, but how did we get stuck, right? Their way of
Uh
defining
huh.
it is just that we're stuck in doing one
Right.
thing, and that's the actual problem. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
term for that moment, paleo parapolitics, I suppose. Sort of
Yeah.
how
No,
did.
it's a good one.
Oh, thank you.
I like it. Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
good because
So,
like that
as
whole
a
thing is mysterious or mystic even. Like
mystic, even.
it's
Yeah.
I don't know, like because it's like, I mean, David and Greve they refuse to use the word state, right? And then they go on
Mm.
to talk a little bit about. I don't feel like they really fully elaborated that, but I saw that what's his face Matt Christman when he was doing something on his Kush vlog, like he
He
was going
did
through the
that.
whole
Yeah.
book. Yeah, and there was one book he said that he was going to read after because he was getting interested in the whole ritualistic aspect of the commodity, like how the
Mm.
commodity or like the pre-capitalist commodity must have begun with some kind of metaphysical charge of some kind, right? Like
Oh, that
that an
actually
object
looks really
suddenly,
interesting. Oh.
right? Yeah, I mean even
Yeah.
Zizek talks about it in the. I think it's the second film he does in his Pervert's Guide to Ideology. When he goes with the Kinder egg, he's like Kinder
Uh-huh.
surprise egg, an extraordinary commodity. And then he's like,
Oh, it is.
I don't
Thank you
know,
for that.
like, yeah, and he's like, what does he say? He says, like it was already Marx who long ago pointed out that a commodity is not just an object that you acquire and then consume. It is actually something, filled with, yeah,
Mm.
metaphysical niceties, and it's like, I mean, just look at how people keep the boxes of their iPhone, right? Like it's to
Mm.
remember kind of like that primordial state of the commodity when it's just in circulation, and
The
it's like it's an
unboxing
actual.
video, as
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah,
unboxing
yeah. The
video is a
unboxing videos
video
like
where they,
going
celebrate
crazy.
A ritual. That's a
Yeah, and
ritualization of that
definitely.
moment.
Yeah,
Is it
and
like a
children are going
potlatch? No,
nuts
maybe it's different.
about that.
But we could
Like, you know,
connect
we
this. I think I'm getting the most out of like just getting into anthropology and archaeology, as
mm,
colonial as it is, and I have to, question that a
yeah,
lot. But um,
mm,
reading sort of the most materialist of the anthropologist archaeologists, Brian Hayden,
mm,
mostly, right?
yeah.
Uh,
What has he
um,
written? I remember that name, but
yeah, so the
um,
power of myth in prehistory is the most recent one from maybe 2021.
okay.
And
Is that the
yeah,
one
that's
that
about
Mattis
secret societies.
Crispin is
And
referring to?
I do not know. I'm sleeping. I've actually been
Yeah.
sleeping on Matt Christman. I'm realizing, and
Yeah,
I
I don't. I
I
only
should get
watched it
into
because
that.
I was reading Graeber, and then I saw that
This
he
is
was
actually,
doing that.
yeah,
So
he did do that. I saw that he did. I got to get into that.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I wouldn't be surprised if Marx was also aware of, he had in mind when he wrote that, some of the anthropology that he was reading for the notes. He wrote the outline to the birth of the family private property in the state.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
With Engels.
yeah, yeah, Engels ends up writing it,
I mean, he's in everything, but like
but
usually, like they
yeah.
seem to credit him a lot to that one. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, when they go
Hmm.
into the Native
Yeah.
Americans
Well,
and
he
family
does
lineages.
he does say that Marx created the outline as well. So I mean, it's a continuum. But
Yeah,
anyway, that
such
they
a
were
good
definitely
friend.
reading a lot of. They're great friends. They're buddies. They're the best buddies.
Yeah,
They're always,
yeah,
yeah. They shared a
yeah,
toothbrush even. So what can you say?
yeah. It's
Um,
crazy, man.
yeah.
Like so
Uh,
much better than Jung and Freud, right? Like
mm,
Engels just gets it exactly what Marx wants to do, and he's like even sometimes he gets it even better than Marx, and he just assembles his
Absolutely.
stuff and does all the groundwork, and then you have like Jung and Freud, and Jung is just like, oh, I don't agree with your general thesis. I'm just gonna
Mm.
take your fame and just see what we can do with this in
Just
another
run
way.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of the first two playwrights of the No Theater, Zeami and Zenchiku. Komparu Zenchiku
Oh.
comes from a lineage that, if anything, is more prominent, a No lineage, than Zeami, who's maybe like
Hmm.
he's the one that first attracted the attention of the shoguns, right?
Okay,
So
so
he got the
this is
pay
like Kamakura period poetry, or what is later?
slightly
It's
after.
already
So
Tokugawa.
Ashikaga, right?
Yeah.
Muromachi period. But yeah, basically medieval period. And
Hmm.
yeah, the Ashikaga shoguns, Ashikaga Yoshimitsu, sort of falls in love with, and according to disapproving courtier diaries, had a love affair with the young boy Zeami, who was maybe like 12, 13
Oh.
at the time.
So
And yeah, disapproving because of the class difference, actually, not because of the homosexuality. But he
okay.
attracted shogunal patronage, and so he became a very important figure. But actually, Zenchiku had belonged to a more prominent and ancient lineage within the art form. And
Okay.
Zenchiku ends up marrying Zeami's daughter, and Zeami
Hmm.
sort of the standard narrative is that Zeami bequeaths a lot of his treatises actually to Zenchiku, and
Hmm.
Zenchiku becomes in a way his real heir. But that too is a bit of a modern narrative, because in fact the Zeami's no lineage continues on without him
And this
after a
is like
period of,
it's a
yeah.
Buddhist school, or it's just like a mystic group of writers, or
Yeah, it's
what's their
not directly
orientation?
if anything, it's connected to the Kasuga shrine, but there's no clean distinction between Buddhism and Shinto at this time.
Right.
They would
Yeah.
have a festival in front of a pine tree, particularly there at Kasuga shrine. Um,
Hmm.
Zeami is a great
Yeah.
example of a figure in that way, who's like in great decline at the end of his life, actually, when you really look
Hmm.
at it. And actually, most of his treatises he's writing probably not knowing if anything that he's done or accomplished will ever be appreciated by anyone. And because
Okay. Yeah.
the shogunal succession passed him over, in fact. And so
Uh-huh.
the next shogun actually was not into the no theater of his type at all, right?
And does he do
He
the
seemed
same thing that like a lot of poets
mm,
and writers do at that time? Like they kind of want to like thoroughly disassociate themselves from the bureaucratic structure. Like they might start off as a clerk of some kind, gaining literary proficiency, and then they just do, because I know like right after Kamakura, isn't that also the time in China, at least the 1300, right, like beginning of Song Dynasty, you have this trend of like the river and mountain period of poetry, with like there's a big trend of like people moving, because Song Dynasty is like the beginning of the bureaucracy, right, like around there 1300.
Okay.
And so there's like a cool, you know, the only way to be like a cool poet is to kind of be like a beat poet. And so you leave the you've been a clerk or you've been a bureaucrat, you've done, you know, all the official exams and everything, and then you just go, you know, whatever, I'm gonna go drink baijiu and just, you know,
or at least you write about it. You might not even leave the city, but you write about doing that.
Yeah.
And you write about ancient forebears who did it as well. And it's not even clear if you can prove that there was such a mountain dwelling figure even.
Right.
A lot of the Zen stories actually come from that sort of tradition in China. Japan, I would say it's a very different situation, because you actually have these the book Patriarchs on Paper gives kind of a critical look at the formation of a lot of these Zen dialogues. But so performing arts in shrines were usually done by actually very kind of outcast class people in a sort of asylum status, people who would take care of corpses, people who would clean up riverbeds, dealing with death, dealing with really unclean things. But then
they have a word for the Dalit.
Sacred. Kind of,
they have their own word, right? I can't remember what it is, but it's like even lasted until today. Like there's a like a
hinin, eta hinin would be the really kind of shocking word that you don't want to say. A euphemism would be like buraku, right? And you could still, you could totally get
the
sued
buraku
in
class.
civil
That's
court
right.
for like outing someone as buraku class.
But didn't you talk about that in one of your episodes? I think, like, you know, that officially like this was all disqualified, but that there was like a kind of backdoor register because they have historical value, right? Like those old records. So I mean, obviously, then, you know, all you have to do is just be somewhat influential and then go ask a scholar and be like, can I see the buraku register, please? And then it'd be like,
well, it says it on old maps too. And Google was
right. Yeah, that's what you said.
Maps, right? Yeah. And they were just putting them up, and it said, you know, hinin or whatever in certain areas. So that actually is like that would be sort of grounds for a civil suit here.
I think that part is really cool because that's got like you know, like how feng shui is like really cool today. Like it's kind of Taoist, you know, like how to do your interior design. But it didn't start off as like an interior design thing. It was a kind of like provincial landlord way of how to organize a city so that you had, like, you know, the slums in the right place, and that rich people didn't have to go through, you know, like the lower class areas where the demons lived and where there would be bad energy and stuff. It's like a completely like class hierarchical ideology. And if you look at Hong Kong today, it's got like, they also used feng shui to do similar things over there. And they also have that stupid, you know, like, you know, the bottle opener that they introduced now in Shanghai. That's the first feng shui building, I think.
What's a bottle opener?
Stupid,
it's a building that looks like a bottle opener.
It's got the whole, and the whole is supposed to be, you know, the feminine openness that allows the dragon to pass through. And so it's like, you know, kind of feng shui hail to, well, you know, duality of masculine and feminine or whatever. Like, I don't know.
But it actually has roots in like gentrification. urban development politics.
Yeah, to make sure that you know that you don't have to go through a ghetto. Like, let's say there's somebody coming, right? The king is coming from the provincial capital, and you're just you know, a small landlord. You don't want them to like walk through, you know, hours of suburban like, you know, makeshift homes. And so you need to, like, you know, make sure that that the whole city or whatever looks appealing. And that's I mean, involves a lot of like gentrification, as you say, and like, even, I mean, it's even before there could be gentrification, right? It's like, you live over here. And,
smart cities. There's probably a lot of cities. Like, I think there's a lot of Confucianism in modern kind of, whatever you want to call it, transhumanism. Whatever is coming, techno-feudalism, techno-trans-egalitarianism, whatever it might be.
I like techno-feudalism as a term. I think it's like kind of appropriate. Especially because it's got a lot to do with like exactly what they you know, what the old feudal lords were doing. I mean, what Bill Gates and Bezos is doing now is
Yeah.
basically like an exact copy of like the enclosure acts, like of the primitive accumulation in England, where, you know,
Right.
they managed to buy up a lot of land because, you know, you forced out the tenants, they become workers in the industry. You try out, like, should we have husbandry here instead, or is there a specific crop that we can grow, and, you know, different kinds of monocrop methods. And they're doing the
Right.
same thing, you know, like, isn't Bill Gates like the biggest owner of the single biggest owner of farmland in America now?
That is
I think
right.
it's
That
something
is
like that.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is
So
fucked
even,
up,
you know, even in the
like,
reality, but then in the digital sphere as well, it's all, the entire economy is increasingly just about extracting rents. And it's not
yeah,
rent,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
right.
land rents, it's rents on a automated means of production, with, you
Hmm.
know, guided by AI or whatever. So in
Hmm.
that sense, yeah, for sure. I
Yeah,
think feudalism is a good term. And a lot of those models of hierarchy, right? I can totally see.
yeah,
And isn't it interesting how it acquires a kind of, if you dress it up too in mystical Eastern garb, it can acquire a kind of hippie cachet.
yeah.
You can kind of
And
be
they
like,
know
ah,
that.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. Walking
I
through all
mean,
these
you
poor
isn't
neighborhoods really
isn't the
messed up my feng
perfect.
shui, man.
Yeah, yeah. And wouldn't it be the best worker, like in the Fordist kind of system, would be like a Wu Wei worker, like somebody who's really like into Wu
No,
Wei and who's like, you know, don't think, just act, you know, like Bruce
it
Lee, like be
can
like
be,
water,
yeah.
man. And you just stand there
Yeah.
moving things along, you know, like you don't think, you just do. Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I mean that would really connect to the Bhagavad Gita stuff, right?
Mm.
Um, carrying out your Varna Dharma, right?
Mhm.
Your caste destiny, right?
Right, it's kind of Kantian early bourgeoisie ethics, right? Like you can, therefore you shall. Like you know, you have to
Oh,
because
maybe
you
so.
know
Maybe it's
it's
connected
your
to that.
class, right?
Yeah, okay, okay.
Or because that's
Yeah,
basically what Krishna tells the general, right? Like when he's like in
yeah.
despair in the beginning of the
Mm-hmm.
Bhagavad Gita, and he's like, you know, oh, there's gonna be war, and you know, a lot of people are gonna die and things, and he's just like, yeah, like you said, you know, it's your karmic destiny, so you know, don't think too
Yeah,
much about it. Like the world only works if a military man does military things and a blacksmith does blacksmith things, and
right.
I don't know, like Kant somehow, you know, like why the bourgeoisie loved his ethics is the same thing, right? Like it's this calling
Oh,
to a
okay,
new
yeah.
absolute of like maybe who's which is not actually moralistic, but you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
somehow it goes down to virtue, right? Like they make a kind of shift over there, like a less
Mm-hmm.
conscious actor, but they still, you know, the markets still have some kind of cognizance, and so it's like virtue now. You know, you can, therefore you shall. Du kannst, denn du
Right.
sollst, right? Is what it
Mm-hmm.
says in German, I think.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
stimmt.
Do you speak German, right? Like your name
Ein
is so
bisschen.
German. Ein
Yeah,
bisschen?
I have a little
Genau.
bit of German, but
Geil.
yeah, yeah. I
Aber du
studied
bist
it in like high
Amerikaner,
school.
oder?
Ich bin
Du kommst aus
Amerikaner
ja, du kommst aus
aus
Amerika.
der
Genau.
Mittelwest. What do you call it?
Ah, der
Yeah,
Mittelwest. Ja. Das ist Nebraska,
Midwest.
oder was?
Oder
Midwest ist
was? Mm.
Nebraska oder
Kind of
nice.
around Chicago, right? So
Right. Yeah.
Chicago would
That's
be
it.
the biggest city in the Midwest. I think when you say Midwest, you know, maybe think of
Hmm.
that, or the Twin Cities, right? Minneapolis and St. Paul.
Yeah, St. Paul I
Yeah,
wouldn't
but
be able to put on a map, but yeah,
yeah.
Minneapolis familiar.
And yourself, tell me more about yourself. We
Yeah.
I was
So
gonna try to
yeah,
get, yeah.
why can I speak German? Like I don't know, like in Sweden, like so I'm from Sweden, right?
So you're from
And
Sweden. Okay.
yeah, that's it. And in Sweden, like German and Swedish is a lot more closer to each other than German and English or Swedish and English, right? Like it would be um, I don't know like how long they've been separated, but if you read it, you don't need to spend that much studying it. Like the listening is terribly
Mm-hmm.
difficult. Like Danish is even like, you know, my grandmother is Danish and Danish is a lot more
Mm-hmm.
like German already. And so when they speak, you don't really understand anything. But if you read Danish, you can understand everything. And then, you know, when it's proper German, like Hochdeutsch, then it's like, yeah, when they speak, you don't understand if you
Mm-hmm.
haven't trained or studied it, but you could get some
Mm-hmm.
things from reading it.
I tend to
Uh,
find, yeah,
and
reading, I can figure out, oh, this is, you know, I can sort of
yeah,
convert it.
Right. And
Kundoku,
so
kundoku, like you do. Yeah.
yeah, what does kundoku mean?
Kundoku
It's
is
like
in Japanese when you look at a Chinese text and you jump around it and actually read it
oh
in
yeah, yeah,
Japanese grammar, right?
yeah.
You read
I
it
see.
as Japanese. And that's what reading originally really meant in Japan when writing was first imported for a long
Yeah,
time.
they didn't have writing for a very long time. Like that's so strange. I
Yeah, it's
read
an
what's his
interesting
name,
case.
Amino Yoshiko.
Amino
I saw
Yoshihiko,
that
yeah.
you, yeah, Yoshihiko.
Hmm.
And he does such a good job of like giving you another picture than
Hmm.
ever since the day of the first emperor we have been supreme. And his reading is very very different, and
Yeah.
especially that part about like that for such a long time it was an illiterate system, like that they didn't have
Hmm.
writing but they had their own language, and
Yeah, they knew about
it's
writing at
crazy.
least since the first century, and they used inscribed objects as prestige objects and burial goods and stuff, but they don't
Hmm.
actually, there's no evidence for widespread writing until the 7th
Yeah,
century and the Sui
yeah,
Tang expansion into the Korean Peninsula, potential of invasion, and yeah, it stimulates
yeah.
state formation even
That's the
further.
Heian period,
Yeah.
is it?
The Nara period, Asuka Nara period is when, yeah, so a bit beforehand.
Okay.
But yeah, so converting
Yeah.
things, you
So
can
should
kind
I?
of I can kind of look and read with German goggles, just
Yeah.
Danish or Swedish or whatever, a little bit.
Mm. Yeah. It gets. And so I did. Like when I went to China when I was like 16 the first time, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
because I was really bored. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to like this student counselor in high
Mm-hmm.
school, and I was like, where is the furthest that you can go away from here? And she was like, oh, probably Australia. Like Australia would
Mm-hmm.
be good. But if you want to go like further away, like culturally, and like if you want to be like somewhere where you will not, you will not feel at home at all, then you can go to China. Like we have a program that you can go to China. Nobody has done it so far, but if you want to, you can do that. And yeah, and then I went to and I lived with a host family. The father was like
Oh.
a member. He was like a party member, and so he was supposed to, I don't know, like some kind of cultural position, I guess. And so they had two people because their son was staying at a boarding school in the north of Shanghai, like Baoshan, and then further Baoshan is like the industrial zone, and then after the industrial zone there is a kind of some boarding schools and a more like picturesque countryside area where people often go like for weekend holidays and stuff. And so they had like 2 rooms free in their house, and so they always had like 2 people there. And when I came and I stayed there, I quickly became friend with a German guy from Bayern, and then we stayed
Mm-hmm.
together for a long time. And then I went to we did some trips together in China, like traveling around, and eventually I went
Oh,
to
nice.
live with him in Germany for a while, and then I learned German over there, like in 9 months or something.
Okay,
Like not
yeah.
good enough to like maybe watch like full on technical news, but like
Yeah.
yeah, I can talk to people and get around,
Fantastic.
and so yeah, yeah, it
And
was a good
you
time.
were in Spain sometime after that too. So you've been all over
Yeah,
the
yeah.
place, right?
Like I mean then I stayed in, he went back like because it was just like one
Yeah.
year travels, but I came back, and later like
Mhm.
5 years later he would also come to China, this German guy, before we went to Germany. And I stayed in China for a long time, like and I would travel around, and then I ended up becoming like a monk, right? Like I was initiated
Right.
in the in Japan they will say the Yodo Shinshu tradition,
Yeah.
but it's not like or the Yodoshu like the
Yeah.
Pure Land
Maybe you would say
tradition.
Jodo, Jodo K
Yeah, right,
or
because it's
something.
earlier. Yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
Pure Land
like
School.
Sukhavati Buddhism, kind of. Yeah, and
Okay.
but in China it's really mixed, like so we would have
Hmm.
like Chan students in the same temple, like Chinese Chan practitioners, and
Yeah, like Zen meditation.
my shifu was like really old, and
Hmm.
his shifu was even older, and so he didn't
Yeah.
want to take on like new students, and so he suggested that I should do like a pilgrimage instead. He was like, you're not going to learn a lot like in the temple anyway, like I mean you've been here now but you know, the way is the way, right? Like you have to get really dirty now, man. Like you have to like the Buddha never taught to live without any money, he said in the beginning, right? Like, because I was kind of like, you know, maybe a hippie notion that, oh, you go to the temple, you don't have to live with money anymore. And then, you know, he was like, yeah, the Buddha never taught anything about that. You know, you want to see like what it is like to be begging for your food, you know, like that's gonna change your mind a little bit. And so, and you're gonna have to work on a lot of rice fields, my friend. And I was like, okay, let's do it. Let's head south. And then he helped me. And I became like good at painting murals. And so when I met like when I met like shifus in the temple, they would like recommend me to the next place so that I could paint there. And it was like a really nice, you know, like a party card stamp. Like,
there you go.
Yeah. Like now you can go to the next place. Yeah. And so I would be invited, and I ended up like traveling everywhere, almost like around China. I went to Korea, I went to Japan, I went like by boat, you know, with like those like the low class boats where you're all in like one big room in the bottom of the boat. And I would go from Shanghai to Osaka and Nagasaki, and I hitchhiked around in Japan, like went to Kamakura, Tokyo, obviously, and I went along that coast like Shizuoka, and I took the boat often from Shimonoseki to Busan like 4 times or something. And I remember one time, like I was in Hiroshima, and Hiroshima is quite far. Like if you know Japanese geography, you know like that Hiroshima is not that close to Shimonoseki. But I was like, I had 2 days left of my visa, and then I got thrown out from like one farm. It wasn't a temple, but it was like a yagi farm, and the guy wasn't really doing like, I don't think he was doing like sound agriculture, you know, farming work. Like, that was my opinion. Like he didn't really seem to know what he was doing. He was a kind of like ex-clerk in the JA, you know, like the Japanese agriculture bureaucracy.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
He just and he started to do something on the side just to, you know, to be like, oh, I can't just be a farmer bureaucrat, you know, like I have to do some farming as well. And so we got into a lot of fights about like, you know, what is actually like organic farming and stuff, and like what is Shisen Noho. And so he threw me out, and there was 2 days left on my visa, and I was like, oh, fuck it, I'll walk from Hiroshima to Shimonoseki. Like I'll just head west. And then I came like I think 2 or 3 days too late, and the guy was like, you overstayed your visa period for like two days. And the guys in the port are usually a lot cooler, like they're a lot nicer than the people at the airport, you know, because they don't usually deal with tourists. It's people who are like, you know, Korean workers and people who can't afford to travel by any other means. And so he was like, you know, I was like, yeah, but I walked from Hiroshima, man. Like I walked every day, like from Hiroshima to Shimonoseki. He was like, that's crazy. Nobody should do that. Okay, here you go. And he just stamped my passport, and I went through.
It. I've heard of that. Yeah. They'll just they'll give you like a visa. They'll say, I will give you a visa for this day, this day, this day.
Mm-hmm. You get like a 5-day extension or something. And he was really cool. And then then I went to Korea, and then I stayed in Korea, a lot of temples there, learning how to do like kimchi. Like? Nice. Oh, it's great, man. Like Korea, like Korean food, because maybe, you know, because I'm also from like really northern part of the world, and so I was so like impressed with how good their seasonal food was in the winter. Like in Sweden, you'll get like, if you want to eat seasonal food in Sweden, which is an Arctic country, you'll be eating like, you know, salted fish
like
and maybe
fish,
sauerkraut. Right? Yeah. That would be it. Like if you want to do it hardcore, that you would be eating
traditional
fermented fish and sauerkraut, and there wouldn't be much else for you. However, in Korea, man, they have everything. Like it was so good. Like there was so much good stuff. Like the soup is amazing, everything keeping you warm, and then there's like pickled everything. Like there's like 8 kinds of kimchi that I learned to make. And it's so
and it's like, all is based on like Taoist principles too, I think, right? That you only see echoes of. It only just barely survives in Japan. Like the New Year's nanakusagayu, the rice porridge of the 7 different vegetables that you eat at New Year's, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of Taoist geomancy that the
Yeah.
Japanese state actually is originally kind of founded on that. That's the
Oh, I didn't
first
know that.
state ideology of
Oh, I would.
Japan. Yeah, a lot of the
Okay, I would
tombs,
imagine it
they've
to be
opened up the
Confucian.
tombs and they've found all Taoist like maps of the stars and the
Oh, wow.
directions and the cardinal animals
Yeah.
and things in there. Yeah.
Right.
But
That's
that
so
doesn't
cool.
really survive after all the layers of Buddhism and other
Yeah.
things that have come.
Yeah, Taoism is kind of
Neo-Confucianism and
bad at
stuff.
hegemony. Like they often seem to be incorporated into like either Confucianism or Buddhism. Though I guess,
Mm.
I mean, at that time, wasn't there like this period in China that was called like the 100 schools of thought period? And
Yeah.
still, I mean, if Taoism survived that, it means they have some skills in hegemony, obviously, incorporating other
Yeah, it's
ideologies'
usually this kind of
points of view.
chaos energy that comes in once in a while. I mean, you
Yeah,
mentioned how it could
yeah.
be used, a kind of nihilism. It could it
Hmm.
could be used similarly to the kind of Varna Dharma of the Bhagavad Gita, like you said. That's true,
Yeah,
but of course, usually it's more about like, well, it quickly gets into an elite religious kind of secret society rituals, basically for prolonging
yeah.
life, achieving
Right,
eternal.
like the
Yeah,
alchemy. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Immortality they are really big on, right? Isn't the
yeah.
first,
In
the
China, anyway,
biggest,
that's yeah.
yeah, that big, Xi Huangdi's tomb, like that
Yeah,
the pyramid where Xi Huangdi is supposed to be buried,
yeah,
which they haven't excavated yet because
yeah.
they don't want to touch it.
Hmm.
Um, there's supposed to be like rivers of mercury flowing in there, like
Right, right.
floating. Yeah, mercury rivers. I think that's so cool. And like
Didn't
he
they
died
actually
from
found?
mercury
I think some
poisoning, right?
people. No, yeah, people who tried to dig it up like died from mercury poisoning. I think we know that
And that's
at
cool.
some time. At some time. So I
Yeah.
was in grad school. I took.
Wow.
Yeah, I was dating a Chinese art historian. So I
Mm.
took. Yeah, I took some seminars on Chinese archaeology, early China.
That's
And
a
yeah,
nice
we dealt with that
tradition.
stuff. I forget. Yeah, people have really died from mercury poisoning because of that.
Wow.
That's real.
Yeah. I mean that. Yeah. I want to. I kind of like it. I know like a lot of like the
Mm.
fringe, archaeology, like the alternative history people. They're like, oh, the Chinese state is hiding information, and then it's like, no, man. Like it's because you're gonna break everything if you open it up too soon. Like there's so much been
Mm.
lost, like in archaeology that is being done in the 1800. Like it's too early. Like they didn't have radar and all these high tech tools, and they just go in like any grave robber would go in and steal things for for the museums, and they break
Right.
so much and they clean things. Like I read this one book now recently. What was it called? Like it's kind of like semi fringe archaeology. It was called like the immortality key, I think. It was
Oh,
about like the
I feel like I've
psychedelic
heard that.
origins of. Yeah, it was. It
Mm.
came out 1 or 2 years ago, and it's about like the psychedelic origins of the not the Eucharist. Well, it includes the Eucharist, but it's mainly about the mystic rite
Ah, that's
at
why I heard it.
Elysium.
Rev Left did an
Yeah.
episode with the author. That's what it
Oh,
is.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah, yeah. I
idea
should
that the
listen to that.
Eucharist was maybe originally psychedelic mushrooms or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so from the
Uh,
perspective of secret society rituals, and the origins of maybe class society in that, and then if you accept, it looks to me, broad strokes, religious history might grow from, maybe we have innate human beings sort of originally have some
mm,
ways of connecting spiritually to the landscape. We do these collectively. We're extremely collective and cooperative in order to survive the harsh conditions on the African savanna after leaving the forests, right?
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Challenging environment, hospitality becomes crucial, all of this. But then you start getting supposedly originally in Europe, right? Although I wonder if that's going to be overturned by more even-handed analysis, but uh, areas where you get big runs of whether moose or salmon or whatever, supposedly in Europe,
Mm-hmm.
the Pyrenees are a big source of it, right? Where they're building all the elite bunkers for the surviving the
Oh, like
apocalypse,
in
right?
between France and Spain, up
Spain.
there, like the Sierra Nevada. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah. That's
That's
where. Yeah,
where.
yeah, yeah. He talks about that one. That there was like a Dionysian. No, not Dionysius. The other one, the agricultural god. The more.
Demeter?
Oh yeah, Demeter, yeah, right.
Mm.
And the daughter who is taken back, right, and from Hades, and then she is allowed to stay 6 months in Hades and 6 months in this world, and that's why we have
Oh,
the
okay,
seasons,
okay. Oh,
right? Yeah,
hadn't
I
heard
like
that
that one
connection.
story.
Oh, nice.
And they started like, because Demeter was worshipped at this the Elysian uh,
Mm.
mystic rite, like where Plato and Socrates and all these big shots where they went, and
Right, right.
yeah, and
Yeah, these would
then
be sort of
she,
secret society areas, right?
yeah,
Or
for sure. I
oracles
mean, you were
and yeah.
killed if you talked about it.
Hmm.
If you talked
Hmm.
about it outside the secret society, they would kill you apparently. Like,
Yeah,
and there were like accounts of people being killed, and so these were
yeah.
kind of rogue elements, the ones that went to Spain and stuff and started these. And I'll just like connect why I came in to talk about this. Like
Hmm.
when the
Hmm.
like the savagery of like early archaeology, which also still takes place today, like that,
Yeah. I don't know
often
if
when
it's
they
got
found
better.
like vessels and stuff and like containers, they wouldn't think to examine what was in these vessels. Like archaeobotany wasn't like a popular thing back
Mm.
then, and so
Mm.
they've been cleaned. Like everything that you see in museums, they've been so clean that you can't tell
Oh, they might
like
only care
what
about the
was.
pots.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but wouldn't it be interesting to know what
right.
was in them? Like how could that
And
not
then
strike
on the other
a
side,
chord?
with Japanese art history, it's often a big issue where like a tea vessel, every time that a precious tea vessel would change hands, the new owner would
Hmm.
actually build a new box or some other kind of fancy container
Okay.
around the old box. So they would have accretions
Wow.
of many, many boxes like Russian dolls
That's cool.
eventually
Yeah,
for
yeah.
with inscriptions on each box from the owner that had owned it at that time. And
Huh?
when Ernest Fenollosa brought all of this Japanese art back to Boston
Yeah.
after he left
Yeah.
Japan under a bit of a cloud at the end of his career.
Hmm.
He donated all this to the Boston MFA, Museum of Fine Arts, and they threw away all the boxes. So they have only
Nah, what? Why? Why
they
would
have
you
only
do
the
that?
pots. Yeah. So in
Okay,
that case, the
that's
vessel was actually
ridiculous.
important, and they did away with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean
But
that's a perfect example, like
yeah,
the in ignorance of like what is actually important and like what was important to these people who
yeah.
made these things that are preserved. Like I know, like also like you were talking about like Chinese, dating a Chinese art historian, and like the archaeological tradition, in China is really interesting. Like how, everybody talk about the Cultural Revolution as being this kind of, dark era of science and stuff, but actually like
Oh no,
archaeology
no.
during that time was big. Like
Mm-hmm.
they tried to make archaeology a kind of popular science, because if you really
Mm.
look at like archaeology, it's like one of the most conservative fields in academia. I mean, just think about it. Like,
Oh yeah.
if you talk about like physics, everybody knows Einstein. You talk about history, everybody knows Marx. You talk about, let's say, medicine, everybody knows, Pasteur, right? And you talk
Yeah.
about like, you can find a person almost representing like a big father of that field. But you ask somebody about archaeology, I can't tell you the name of a single like famous archaeologist. I can do some now today, like modern ones. I wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to do like the founding fathers. And it's also like the the reason why they try to popularize that that field, obviously in China during the Cultural Revolution, is because, well, they sit on the keys, both figuratively and literally, to history, like how
Yeah.
we read, what you do on your show, and like, to the degree what I do on my show as well, like, like
Right.
how these objects don't speak for themselves, right? They need to be put into a narrative. Doesn't matter if you just found like a box with a teacup. If you don't have the narrative of why the boxes are there, you're gonna throw away the boxes. And this,
Right.
same thing. Like, like if you don't have a class conscious narrative, you're not gonna be looking for things like, what happened during the medieval times of all these big empires during the Bronze Age, for example. And you're
Mm.
not going to be looking towards what might they tell us about the true progress of history, or like the forward movement of history at least. uh,
Right.
and so they like even the terracotta armies, they were discovered during the Cultural Revolution, and that's pretty much considered
Hmm.
one of the biggest archaeological finds of the second half of the 1900s. And so,
All right.
they weren't, just destroying things like iconoclasm and stuff. They were doing really good archaeological work. And
That's the first I've heard
and
that. I mean, I've heard of
yeah,
medical. I've heard of actually medical research during the
yeah,
Cultural
that's also
Revolution.
really
There
cool.
was a lot. Oh, a lot
No,
of
because like this one really
the little
excites me.
narrative that I heard, and I was thinking, oh, I want to look into that. I wonder just what the details are. But there were things like cancer research. Supposedly, there's some herb or something that I wonder.
Yeah.
It certainly is the case that China cowboys and other CIA operatives set up like dummy research centers in China to systematically gather Chinese medical knowledge. But
insulin was big.
Okay.
Like because insulin, you know, because diabetes is a folk sickness, right? Like it's a chronic people disease, and the lady who got the Nobel Prize 5 years ago for the extraction of some molecular string from the yomogi plant, you know, like the yomogi one that grows everywhere. Something Artemisia vulgaris or something.
It's it actually is. It's the same thing. It's mugwort. Or it's mugwort.
Mugwort.
I found that out at some point. I knew what yomogi was, and if you make New Year's mochi. It's the green mochi is yomogi.
That's right.
But that's the same mugwort.
In Korea they use it it's not exactly the same, because be aware, don't try to smoke the mugwort one. Like if you have asthma or if you have like, hey, this I used to do it. Like I think the European mugwort has yellow flowers and the Japanese one have purple flowers. And
do you smoke it in Europe? I didn't realize.
They do in Korea and Japan. Some like farmers do, like they make tea and they smoke it as a substitute for tobacco. And so I would do that in Japan. And then when I went back to Europe, I was like, I'm gonna pick some mugwort and I'm gonna try to do the same thing. But I got really like hay fever and like really strong for like a month, and I didn't make the connection. No. And then my friend, my roommate, he was like, what is it that you're smoking all the fucking time? You know, maybe that's the reason why you got hay fever. And then he looked it up, and there was like some witch homepage, like witch.com or something. And it was like first page mugwort, and it was like, might cause hay fever, like be aware. Like, and I was like, okay, that's why that happened. But like during the Cultural Revolution, right? Like that lady, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, like 5 years ago, who made this discovery about the first non-patented anti-malaria prophylaxis. She said, I think in her Nobel Prize speech, or if it was written later, I don't know how bold she was, that, this wasn't my achievement. This was a group of scientists, part of a project, which I was also even part of that initial project, that was founded by like a report or a document handed out by Mao Zedong, that we need to address the problems of Chinese traditional medicine. And we need to realize that we're sitting on a gold treasure, like of medicine that hasn't been scrutinized by modern science, so that we can get rid of like all the old like superstition around it, and we can find what is actually functional and what works. And because that's what the West is doing. They're taking all their new medicine, isolating things from like the rainforest and stuff. We have it all on paper dating back like 5,000 years. We need to like go to the archives and look what and categorize and find out a way to like merge these two traditions. And so she was part of that project, and now, she got the Nobel Peace Prize for, not the Nobel Prize in medicine for, like the non-patented. I don't know. Maybe now we got a patent. Like I'm not a dentist. Maybe like maybe they do patents these days. But that was the initial approach.
This is the context in which I heard it, is that they had been able to discover things that people doing research under market pressures would never be able to discover. How are you going to go through
5,000 years of archives? You wouldn't. But you're not going to go to the Vatican archives and go looking through, old Jesuit writings about, where can we find medicines. Like they just, that's not what you can find.
The drug trade in the early modern period is just amazing. They're taking things like ambergris, those sort of like boogers of a whale, right?
What? I didn't know that.
Ambergris?
That's
weird. What do you say?
Yeah.
How do you say that?
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right. Like it's the plaque or something of a
it's
whale,
like a plaque that they sort of like blow kind of vomit out, and it comes on the shore. And
Yeah.
no, Europeans at that time, supposedly, if they would eat just a little bit of ambergris, they would become as
Mm.
intoxicated as if they had drunk a great quantity of wine.
Wow. That's
So
cool. Yeah.
I don't know if that would there are many things that we would not consider to be drugs today that
Yeah.
were considered to be drugs and were considered to have all kinds of reactions and effects that we can't really measure today.
Yeah.
Just got home from Illinois, locked the front door, oh boy. Got to sit down, take a rest on the porch. Imagination sets in, and pretty soon I'm singing. Doot, 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 looking out my back door.
Yeah. Talking about it, like the vessels that are like, cleaned out. Yeah.
Yeah.
The search for the progressive or the gradual transition from paganism to Christianity, right? And if there had been some kind of psychedelic involvement. I think the old book,
Right.
like the old famous one, was the muscaria, Amnita muscaria, right? Like the fly mushroom, right? The red and white one. That was the old, like really big old theory. Now this guy that came on, I guess on Revolutionary Left Radio, the one who released his book 2 years ago, one of the big things that he wanted to put forward in his book was that with Demeter and the old ancient agricultural gods in their cults, there seems to be an emphasis on wheat. And wheat is, where that ergot bacteria grows, right? Like it's a bit of a problem, like even in beer production today. Like it's got so many names in German, for example, because every local area would know about this bacteria, and some call it Saint Thomas's fire. I don't know if I do the saint's name right, but like there's it appears a lot like in kind of mystic tradition during the Christian era, and he's suggesting that that this is a legacy from the Greeks, and that this is what they consumed, like in Elysium.
Sure.
Elysium. I don't know if I'm the mystic places has a different name. Elysium is the afterlife, right? And the place itself,
maybe we're thinking of
the initiation was
Elysis. The oracle at Delphi. There was an oracle at Delphi.
Yeah.
Eleusis. The Eleusinian mysteries, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. And so the ergot is a bacteria that or a fungus, maybe it's some kind of pathogen that I've never had a problem with it when growing wheat, so I don't really know exactly what it is, but anyway, it is the microbe that from which you can extract LSD.
Yeah.
I guess I do. But if I wanted to grow it for LSD, I would intentionally inoculate it with this microbe, because that's how Hoffman got it, apparently.
Okay, so sacred ecstatic experiences are often a key part of secret society rituals, which are these rituals that get together these proto-ruling classes in places like the Pyrenees, in places like, you mentioned, the Near East anyway. It's PPN-A, PPN-B, pre-pottery Neolithic is the layer, right? Where you begin to see more complex secret society rituals. And gradually then, if we're talking about sort of spiritual history, it's they who begin to put forward a chief. And the chief, we know this from anthropological data, right? Looking at different ethnographically observed societies through certainly flawed observers and all that. But we see that they tend to put forward a king or a chief who comes from the lower strata of the secret society members, because it's someone that they can control, and they put him up as a symbol. And then legends of a one god who is good and who's going to save everyone and who gave us the beautiful grain and all of this grow around this chief. But before that, much more what you have is we secret society members are the ones who are in communication with the spirits, and that represents a kind of enclosure or privatization of a much more widespread shamanistic practice that used to be
Right.
fairly universal among human beings under
Yeah.
and was universal among human beings in egalitarian societies up to the modern period.
Mm.
So
Yeah, that's
Greece
really
would be
like
part of that, right?
interesting because I think this is what they often miss out. Like this guy who wrote this book wasn't that fringe of a historian. I think he wasn't even a historian. I think he's like a lawyer or something. But a lot of like the journalists, like I like him. He wrote the introduction right to that book. Graham Hancock, for example. I think he's okay, but he also falls victim to this kind of class unconscious approach to these old secret societies, because they seem to
Ah.
think that they are liberators or something. They seem to
Mm.
think that, oh, the ruling class today are hiding the advanced technology of these old secret societies, when it's like, no man, that they are the same people. They weren't doing anything else back then. They were doing the exact same thing that they're doing now, controlling the populace to extract grain and to reproduce their own class position. Why would they have been doing anything else back then? And even if they were back then doing something else, against who then? Like who are they, these rebels against? And like, why would advanced technology be so, rebellious? You need class
Mm.
consciousness if you want to make use of technology in a rebellious way. Like
Right.
iron, for example, right? Like iron is a very democratic metal because it exists in abundance. It's cheap. It lasts longer, so you can inherit it from your father farmer, and so like in Athens, you could be a
Hmm.
peasant and a soldier, whereas in Sparta you could only be a soldier or you could only be like a serf farmer. And so
Uh-huh.
these inventions, they happen on the outskirts, right? Like
Right.
or like this use of technology in a rebellious way happen on the outskirts. Like, I mean, what were they inventing at the same time in Egypt? Like mirrors and stuff, like new kind of jewelry, things that the ruling class wants. And
Right. Right.
you need, like, I think
And I
that's what they
think that
miss out on, like in their
right, right.
reading.
Exactly. I do want to have an eye for that for sure. I at the same time, one limitation of like Brian Hayden, Brian Hayden is very much sort of there, right? And
Hmm.
the ethnographers, whether it's their prejudice or whatever, um, I am willing to hear a lot about sort of maybe there in actual indigenous societies, there probably was a significant balancing function, and there probably in most cases there was a whole ecosystem of secret societies counter secret societies, and they're all sort of
Yeah.
competing, and you actually end up with a fairly equal society still in these
Yeah,
cases,
but I mean, it's really
especially
early.
yeah.
Like the early shamanism is, when is it the transition from animism to shamanism? It's about like 30,000 years ago. Like when you have those first,
We'd be talking
yeah.
about 50,000 years ago to 30,000,
Oh yeah,
something like
yeah.
this. Yeah.
Sorry, not 30,000. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It would be like, yeah, that's right. And that
Yeah.
when you have that transition from animism to shamanism, you wouldn't. I think you can't say that is class society already. Like that's still, they might be doing
Yeah.
the same thing later when class society does take
Mhm.
place, but at that time, yeah, it's much more like you said. That you could have a more, like an ecosystem that is much more dialectical, where
Yeah.
some people are shamans just because maybe they're crazy or something. Like they're just
Yeah.
like outsiders, and they
Uh-huh.
aren't in it for necessarily maintaining power, or like even if they
Right.
were, there wouldn't be the structures for them to be able to fool enough people to make
Right.
a
Well, and
city
if we
religion or
think
whatever.
evolutionistically, sort of from looking back from where we are, we can see that this laid foundations ultimately for class
Yeah.
society. But at the time, it may not, wouldn't have to go in that direction, and it didn't go in that direction for a long, long time. For many
Right.
of these indigenous societies that survive into modernity. Speaking of metal, the Kwakwakiwak and
Hmm.
other northwestern Turtle Island potlatch peoples, they would that so first of all, the secret societies actually materially do not accumulate surplus. They don't accumulate material surplus, but they accumulate honor and debt and gratitude, and
Right.
that's
It's
actually
like
what they're
another register
yeah.
of domination. Yeah.
They would indeed in their within their clans, I think. exploit their fellow clan members and get them to produce these very labor-intensive metal sheets, like a sheet of copper or something. And then one of the attractions at the potlatch would be, it's basically just, first of all, it's giving away wealth, but then also there would be displays of destroying wealth, like throwing this
Right.
precious
Yeah, I remember that.
Ulicon oil onto a fire, or taking these sheets of copper that are made for this purpose, and then in a ritual setting, going and actually just poking a big hole in it and ruining it. It's like, we're so wealthy.
Yeah.
Our clan can ruin this.
I mean, the Yuppie people do that today. I don't know if it's a thing in America or in Japan, like the brats or like the Yuppie people in Sweden. There was like a trend about 5-10 years ago, where they would order a bottle of champagne, and then they asked the bartender to pour the other bottle into the sink. Like, and this is called vaska in Swedish. It's called like sinking it. Like, oh yeah, I'll have a bottle and sink the other one, and then that's just I mean,
there you go.
But I mean, that's just like a cultural, like, I guess, I don't want to say primitive, because I don't want to like out prehistorical society as necessarily primitive, but it has this kind of, it doesn't say everything about their own relationship to the reproduction of capital, obviously, that they sink things. But I mean, you do have it also, right? Like in industrial society, where you destroy things to keep up the value of a commodity on the market, right?
Yeah.
Like they will burn, like heaps of wheat, and like during the coffee, and like during the coffee wars, they would burn and destroy loads of coffee just to make sure that the third wave specialty coffee kind of had a niche that they wanted to sell, right? Like you can't sell specialty coffee if that's a common coffee. Like
that's actually a value producing activity, to destroy that particular pile of potatoes or whatever. That's just
don't they call it like creative destruction or something, like in their Milton Friedman-esque
oh sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of that is talking about sort of colonial pillage and things, right? Move fast and break things is Facebook's motto, right?
which is just like, that's pillaging, man. Like,
right.
I'm sorry. It's nothing else. I think that what you say, like that these early secret societies wouldn't accumulate surplus like in the material, but there is a kind of surplus enjoyment of having the best music and the best rituals and the best kind of intrigue. And things
certainly
that people,
sharing that with everyone, but
I mean, you gotta at least let everybody know, like otherwise who are you playing this theater for?
And in that sense, it's kind of adorable. It's like, if that's all that it was, if we could get Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Gates to go to his island, and they have to invite everyone in the world to come to the island, and they're like, oh, aren't we great? And then everyone says, yes, you're great, Jeffrey. Thank you, Bill. You're the best.
And then we kill them.
And
like
then
after, like it's just
even better. But
wasn't that also? Sorry, go on.
But it could be very peaceful, right? If they were not sacrificing children to Moloch or anything, and they just were, giving out lots of gifts, and we say, oh yeah, you're great, and then they go home, and it's a parallel universe where they do none of the things that they do in our universe, right?
Right. That would, as you say, that would be really sweet. Like, and didn't they have, like in Greece, like load of misuse, like you talked about earlier, like how the early clan societies would take a person who was from the lower part of the class, or like the lower classes, the lower stratum, and then they put him on top, and as a kind of puppet, obviously, right? That you can, it's like the bully, like, do that thing again, that you do, that's so funny, like. And the Greeks, they did a similar thing, right? Like they had the Lord of Misuse, which was a kind of during the decline of a certain king, or a period that is usually associated with turbulence, I don't know, like during a famine or something, they would have a kind of Lord of Misrule, and so they put like a ruler on the top, who was a kind of, it has this whole what the Russian literary theorist Mikhail Bakhtin, right? Like he writes a lot about like the carnival. And it has this carnivalesque feeling of like, one day you're a beggar and the next day you're a king. And I mean, at the first, like the first angle would be, we would feel like, oh, well, maybe that's a kind of like, a knight's story kind of tale, right? Like, oh, like, there's a position for everybody, or like, there's a possibility for everybody to get up there. But when you start to look at it, I mean, I already like hinted at it, like they imposed these lords of misrule during times where let's say there was a famine or something, so that there would be, in the end of the Lord of Misrule, the Lord of Misrule is killed symbolically as well, because yeah, you have like you have very terrible situations and conditions, and you don't want to take like, one of your people to take the blame for this. So you start a carnival and be like, let's have a peasant be the king, and then be like, look at all the bad things that he's doing. Like, the crops are dying, we gotta kill him. And then people will be like, yes, let's do that. And then spring comes along and, things are good again. Like it's a smart way to neutralize class tension.
I'm seeing all kinds of parallels to American democracy and to the internet, where everyone is famous for 15 minutes at a time.
Yeah, I mean, how big of a coincidence isn't it? Like, Trump and COVID like happening at the same time. Like it's the first pandemic, and it's the first really down. Like carnivalesque
and
leader.
then Joe Brandon is our next kind of sin eater that's up there, and he gets to absorb all the dark red White House energy.
It's crazy. Like how old are they? Like it doesn't look like, I don't know what it is that is
like, it even the same guy? Does his earlobes? I don't know.
Yeah, that's been going around a lot.
I don't know.
But I mean, they don't look their age though. I mean, you don't need to be a conspiracy theorist to I mean, if I think about people who are 70 years old in my family or around me, they do not look like Trump and Biden. Like,
they're clearly pumped full of all kinds of pharmaceuticals, right? I mean, if we're talking about everyone from Pelosi to Kamala, everybody's on all kinds of pharmaceuticals all the time, and I think it's just everyone knows it.
I saw one TV series, I can't remember, like what show was that? Was it a Black Mirror thing? There was like a kind of televangelist who was on some kind of like experimental drug, to get that fervor, like the Holy Spirit a synthetic experimental drug. I mean, they must do, I mean, it'd be childish to think that they don't do the same thing, like with the main spectacle, like the main political one, like not only the religious ones.
Absolutely.
And then, I mean, again, back to the old clan societies, like the shamans, who were they? Yeah, they were the people who could take drugs the best. Like they were the ones who knew how to do it.
And even in ancient Greece, I think this is definitely the case. So that's what Christianity is such a weird animal in this way, because right, you have like, I get monotheism, okay, it's like, there's the king figure, okay, there's one center of society now, and that's the source of the grain that you have to work to grow. It's very, very common. Like and then behind the scenes, we know archaeologically that we can see that the cave shrines and things are either in the palace hidden away, or hidden away up in the mountains in a society that also has a very developed central temple architecture and priesthood architecture around a monarchy, and probably a central kind of good god, as opposed to the earlier sacred society where it's bad gods. The bad gods are out there, and we have the technologies to go into the sacred states, ecstatic states, and fight the cannibal spirits, tame the cannibal spirits so they don't come and bite you. And sometimes they're, according to the ethnographic accounts, they would be like, somebody failed to show the proper respect to this, so my cannibal spirit is coming on me now. I can't help it. You weren't a good boy. I'm gonna come and bite you. And they literally would bite a piece of flesh off the arm of someone there. And maybe the ethnographer maybe the ethnographer though also is privy to the fact that was somebody that was like decided beforehand, and he was in on it, and they knew that that was a plant in the crowd.
He wants to be eaten.
Right. Well, Jim Jones was doing things like this, right, in his sermons.
For sure. The fucking, the frog, man. Like, he had a box, like, where they... I talked, like, with Jimmy recently, like, Jimmy Falun Gong on Program to Chill. And... I was talking about, like, the old... okay, so this will be, like, a spoiler if you, like, give it out to this episode before.
I think
it hasn't come out yet. We were talking about, like, the the Alleluia shamans of Guyana, like that Jim Jones supposedly, like he had the connections with them, and he knew about like a big massacre, like a big suicide, a ritual suicide, where 400 people had killed themselves in the end of the 1800, like a
Yeah, in
kind of
Texas or something, right?
no,
Yeah, that
man,
was
in Guyana, in the same place.
it was in
In the
Guyana, in
same
the same
place.
place?
Yes,
Okay, I remember
yes.
this
By
from the
like a
Jim
fuck.
Hogan. Yeah, the Jim
Yeah,
Hogan piece on Jim Jones
right.
mentions
Yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so it
He
was in
does.
Guyana. Okay, I didn't realize.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
found the original. I went further than Jim Hogan, and I found the original German text that this anthropologist found,
All right.
having talked to somebody who was there to kill the old Jim Jones, let's say, like the old tribal leader who said that they needed to do this so that they could become white people and that they could be reborn. And like there's a lot of strange connections. And he met one who killed this leader, and he told that story to him. And how did we get to talk about this? What was the connection?
Well, secret
Right? Yeah. So
societies, right? And
yeah, and the frog.
Christianity
Yeah.
is such a weird animal, right? Because you have
No.
the monotheism of a kind of state, ancient empire with a priesthood and a temple and everything, right? But then that is connected to this kind of ecstatic secret society ritual, ritual cannibalism, which was a common feature of a lot of these, right? This is how we often know archaeologically. We know archaeologically that there was secret society activity because there will be a tiny little cave where maybe 2 or 3 people could only be in there at once. It's not a big group area for rituals, but there's tons of art on the walls, and there's maybe the same picture will be drawn over and over on the same wall, as if drawing the picture each time going through an initiation is part of a ritual.
And then like metamorphosis, like
yeah. There will be kind of beast animals, changing into a certain animal, which could be an animal ancestor. It could be, I'm sure it's very complicated, and a lot of these patterns have got to be oversimplifications, but human skulls with signs of being eaten, right? That's some of our earliest evidence for belief in the soul, by the way. I mean, that's another kind of interesting methodological question which keeps coming up in this conversation right now.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't Hegel say the same thing, right? Like he says that the Geist is the now I can't remember it in German, but yeah, that the spirit is the bone, right? The spirit is the skull. Like that's Hegel's, like the dialectic, the phenomenology of spirit is basically like you hear this. I mean, Zizek says, you know, in the beginning it sounds to us like so primitive, right? Like, why would I ever be a cannibal? But then you start thinking about it, like the skull, like monks also, like really hardcore, you know, like Master Eckhart, and you know, like the Bedouins, Beguines, you know, like all these, you know, the whole apophatic tradition of Christian mysticism. They kept,
that
you know,
word
skulls.
Apophatic, like, I was looking for that for so many weeks.
Yeah, it's so good. Like
Thank you for that word.
The best explanation I heard about that is like, you know, like apophatic means like some kind of negative theology, right? Like that's you take away things, or rather than glory, like rather than glorifying God, you continue like a practice of saying like that's not it. And somebody, I think it was, Dionysus, the pseudo Dionysus of the Areopagite, he said that like an old Assyrian monk, I think like from the year 300, the 3rd century or something, he said that it's like making a statue. You know, you start like with a block and you chip away things until a picture starts to appear. Like that is the apophatic approach, you know. And I think that's genius. Like, that's it.
Speak away.
Wegsprechen.
Versprechen.
Verneinen. Like you got, it's like Eckhart has the same thing. Eckhart, he has Master Eckhart is the same thing, right? Like he has the Grund, right? Like when there's nothing left but, you know, the let's say the pedestal where you would have put the figurine. You know, even the Greeks, they had like there's this famous seat or throne. I don't know if it's in Athens or somewhere, where it says like, you know, this is the throne of the unnamed or something, and there was never like a statue on it. You know, it's just like it's just there. And then there's, you know, this one, the owner of this throne is too great to be depicted in a statue or even or like, you know, given a name or something. And so, you know, like it's this nice kind of phenomenological twists, it sounds primitive at
Mm.
first when Hegel says it, the spirit is the bone or the spirit is the
Mhm.
skull. But then you start think about it, like, you want to be materialist? Where else are you
Yeah.
going to go, man? Like, you
Yeah.
you want to be less abstract? You're going to get back to the skull. Like,
I
that's it,
suppose it
yeah,
feels so crude. It feels so crude to learn that archaeologists use that as the sign, the thing that they look for, the telltale sign of belief in
yeah,
spirits in human history. If they find skulls that are bashed open in the back to actually eat the
right,
brain, because that means that people have a sense that the brain is the seat of some kind of selfhood, and they're
yeah,
doing some kind of ritual eating of
yeah.
spiritual energy or selfhood of others. And that's
Isn't
the
that also the contemporary, like, official theory about not Çatalhöyük, but Göbekli Tepe?
yeah,
That
yeah.
Göbekli Tepe was some kind of
Mm-hmm.
skull worshipping a
Mm-hmm.
secret society or cult, or what, I don't know what words are really appropriate. That's
Yeah.
also difficult to know. Like, how many were there, and like what did
Mm-hmm.
this. When you talk about, like, you said, this social ecology, that does have not a class society, but definitely some kind of division of labor, where there are some people who are shamans and some people who are something else, right? Like, one
Mm-hmm.
might not control the other all the time, but you have a kind of ecosystem that, sometimes they
Yeah.
are in charge, sometimes we are in charge. I mean,
But
definitely
it's
right
not
after
actually based
harvest,
on
right?
birth necessarily, right? That's
Right?
one of the
Yeah.
differences, is that you can tell if it's just based on birth, and that you just go through certain rituals if you're born in a certain clan,
Hmm.
regardless. That's a little bit different. I think theoretically people can come from various places, um, but yeah. So Christianity, right? You have this. It's
Hmm.
cannibalism. It's cannibalism.
Yeah.
The haunted bread.
It's
You know,
LSD and cannibalism.
the
That
haunted bread is
what?
is if it's the body of Christ, you're
Yeah.
ritually cannibalizing the god of
Yeah.
the temple and the priesthood and the what? Isn't that,
Yeah.
how does that appear on the
Yeah.
front stage of history? It's escaped from the
Yeah,
back
how is
room
that the
and it's
most
coming up.
sophisticated expression of sublimity? How
Monotheism.
did it get to that point? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
this weird
it's
hybrid of high monotheism with like a very polytheistic, and then some of these very, very
yeah,
secret society elements that which might be present in all societies that have a class society at all. People in the back room are getting together and doing
yeah,
something.
gotta be.
But yeah, gotta
Yeah,
be. But then in Christianity, you
I
have
like
this
it when
kind of
you
thing.
talked about
Yeah.
the grain state in your episode, and you did like this kind of these first, like, who were these first people, right? Like, who got together and
The
said,
paleo
well,
parapolitics.
yeah, you people gotta, grow some grain, and people are like, why should I do that? Like, it takes a lot less time, to be a hunter, and it takes even less time to be a natural farmer. Just be a cultivator. Like, I don't know who talked about it. Like, there was some anthropologists who talk about, like, the Aborigines in Australia, right? Like, where they talk about, like, the domestication of landscape, which isn't the
Right.
domestication of plants, but rather like a pretty advanced planned economy, where all you need is basically something like Stonehenge or some kind of calendar, like a lithic
Mm,
calendar, and then you can domesticate an entire continent, and you know where to go at what time, and there's never going to
right.
be famine. I mean, for 40,000
Yeah.
years the Aborigines lived without famine. Like,
Right.
how, unbeatable in terms of sustainability is that? And
Mm.
then somebody came along, as you say, like, and be like, you people gonna grow some grains. We need some turbulence in this. We need some, yeah, we need
Yeah.
something that can go really wrong.
I think actually, when I made that, I didn't know about the secret societies yet. And I think I phrased it in terms of, oh, there's this wonderful good God who's the ancestor of maybe us nobility and us nobles. And they've given us this grain, right? But actually,
Yeah,
probably or initially, it's more like there are dangerous forces, there are evil forces in the world. And we are the
right.
sorcerers, we're the
Yeah.
sorcerers or shamans who can control those forces. And then out of that sort of grows that innovation does seem to happen within the Middle East, and then that becomes a vanguard of this new kind of society that sweeps across Europe again. So there's a two
Hmm.
stage. Actually, I would update that. I would update
Hmm.
that. It's Europe is having the um, just tons and tons of moose, right, during the Ice Age. There's places where
Right.
you can
Yeah,
get
big game.
moose
Yeah.
extremely easily through these narrow river valleys where the moose have to go through this narrow thing. You can get them all the time.
Like in valleys and stuff, and you just wait.
Yeah, we can salt the meat. We can make jerky. You see lots of bone scrapers. You see lots of fine leather clothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can see they were just accumulating tons and tons of meat, probably based on the sorts of secret society rituals that we see in ethnographic societies, like in northwestern Turtle Island. Right.
Yeah.
So, but then that would be another stage. But yeah.
Wait, which is the other state then? I don't.
The next stage of like PPN, pre-pottery
Mm.
Neolithic, would spreads from then, and that might be much more sort of temple based. That is the grain state. That's the grain state proper. Right. So I think the subordination, or the roots of the subordination kind of begin, and then you have, the grain state beginning after that.
Yeah.
Maybe then beginning based on the kind of, central god and stuff. But Christianity is this weird mix of all these things. And this is why you get, it's amazing to really look at Europe again. It upends all kinds of Eurocentric things because, you can think about like Thomas Aquinas, right? St. Thomas Aquinas, the great theologian.
He'd be the popularizer, my idea of Thomas Aquinas is like, he is the theologian who kind of saves the Catholic Church by incorporating the rediscovered Greek philosophy into Christianity, right?
Aristotle, from like Averroes and Avicenna.
Because it's out there, and people are reading it, and they're like, whoa, wait a minute. They're like, there's some old Europeans here who is talking about something that, is so foreign to, whatever it is, the Catholic Church. My favorite thing about the Catholic Church there is, for example, like weights, right? Like they thought that something is heavy falls faster than something that is light, and then you're like, well, that's not true, right? And you can so easily prove that is like the most easily proven empirical experiment that you can do. You go up into a high tower and you drop something, and then you see which one falls, but then you start thinking, you're like, no, but they own all the high towers. There is no way that you could do the experiment unless you build something out of a wooden structure and you go up there and then you drop it. And then you start to ask yourself, well, no, but people are going to start thinking, that guy is some kind of, Wilhelm Reich kind of personality, like what's he doing with his, organ generator accumulators? Why is he building a big wooden structure and just dropping tools off it to see which one falls faster when they fall the same speed, regardless of their weight? Like it's it's like wind resistance thing, right? But like how does, like how can the Catholic Church can manage to maintain such a truth for such a long time? Because like that whole tradition of the Greeks of, go out and try yourself, that was, forgotten. And then, when it starts to reappear, then Aquinas is there and it's like, come on, like we gotta
he's a kind of beginning of that.
Merge
I'm just beginning to really get into learning about Islamic science, actually, and it's drawing like the there's an old narrative we have a lot to learn and update actually about that, because the traditional narrative is very much like, oh, there was Greek science and then there was like no science for a while, and maybe the Muslims kind of acted as like a vessel just saving it for Europeans to come back and get it again.
So racist of a notion.
But actually,
they just keep it.
It turns out. I thought that too. That's what I learned. But like, but before we move, I was gonna say about Thomas. This high-minded guy who writes, Summa Theologica or whatever. He dies, and his best friends who lived with him up to the point, they take his body and they boil it in a pot. And they take all his flesh off of his bones.
What?
And then they have his bones. And then they distribute it. Who gets his leg? Who gets his fingers for relics, right? We have this.
That's crazy, man.
Saint. So
I had no idea.
Talking about
what?
I mean, this is just totally normal European stuff there.
Yeah, definitely. It's high Catholic society.
Very classical. Oh, speaking of which, our boy Francis is in the shit right now. Yeah.
You see,
Francis is he's in the thick of it. Clearly, he was talking. Maybe I will step down. It seems like there's some kind of coup attempt against him. He dissolved the Knights of Malta. He's revoked.
I saw you posted about that in the Discord, or somebody did.
Yeah.
I saw this. Yeah, that's mad. Why is this
Yeah.
happening?
I don't know.
I
I
thought that
don't
was a
know.
historical thing first, like that had happened a long time ago. And then now I was like, okay, wait, it's
No,
happening
yeah,
right
Pope
now.
Francis currently is
Yeah.
like doing some really he's fighting some kind of battle here. This is interesting.
Mm.
I think
Wow.
the Knights of Malta are now going. The Grand Master is going to be appointed every 10 years and voted on. He just appointed a load
Wow.
of new cardinals, which will
Yeah.
increase the body of people who would appoint his successor, right? Elect his successor.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's
Even
he
crazy. I
fights a
mean, like,
battle. He's
yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
Now, telling the story about like the Aquinas, his successors. Like,
Oh, yeah.
basically, sounds like yeah, some I don't know, some isolated island in the Pacific or something. I don't know. Like
They might
that
be
would be
getting
my
ready to boil
racist
Francis
mind.
for his bones too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Like, what happens to him?
Well,
What's gonna
Benedict,
happen to the
fucking
old?
Benedict was, he was basically deposed by, and it didn't something to do with Propaganda Due happen right about then. I found out later.
Yeah, the whole
Um,
like embezzlement, like from like
2012.
Nazi collaboration, sort of broke during that time, didn't it? And it was
That's
just
what it
like
was.
revealed how, yeah, like it revealed how how I think the worst stories there seem to be like in Croatia, because Croatia is quite Catholic, if I understand it correctly, and they were like big on like let's do some Nazi stuff, like we're not gonna like just be a silent minority who just agrees. We're gonna be like you're on the right track, and let's do it even better than the real folk. And
Yeah.
yeah, and like in connection with the Catholic Church in Croatia, that's where like, because it seems like an off beat place. Like in Germany, maybe it would be too
Yeah.
much of a focus, and that there's gonna be problems.
From an
Whereas
Italian
in Croatia,
perspective
it's
too.
like, yeah. Whereas in
Yeah.
Croatia, it's just above, right? Like you can go to Croatia from Italy, right? Like you just go
Yeah.
northeast and after Tuscany, and you're in
Yeah.
Croatia basically.
Yeah.
And so the connection there is, I mean, it's stronger. Like I think blood lineage wise as well. You have a lot of Italian like aristocrats who live there,
Oh
and
yeah. Well, that's the Dalmatian
yeah,
coast, is it?
I don't know,
It
like, but it's like that
it's sure
Tuscany
to be
area, like
important
where
in
the
the actual old
yeah,
time Mediterranean struggles with like
right,
Venice and
yeah.
stuff, right?
Yeah,
I'm reading that
Venice.
one
That's
book
what I'm
about the
sorry. I'm saying
Venetian
Tuscany.
Secret
It's
Service,
Venice.
right?
Yeah, intelligence. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
why I wanted to say that earlier. Because we were talking about something like in terms of like when the commodity and the ritual of the commodity, and the
Oh yeah.
the people who starts to understand the libidinal charge of the commodity, like how powerful
Mhm.
of an object it is. They are also the
Yeah.
people who start to understand intelligence, and there are other registers of domination than brute
Hmm.
power, right? Like in brute weaponized force. That's like the ideological state apparatus is not the repressive state apparatus. It has methods of its own, and they might even be more crucial
Older.
if you want to stay on top. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right. I think
they
they're
might
I
be
think they
older,
are
and they
quite
might be more
I think they
successful.
actually are older. That was something that Hayden says, that polices and armies seem to grow and secret services seem to grow out of the secret societies after the point that you
Hmm.
begin to have a king and a chief. So isn't
Right,
that interesting? And then
it is.
so I would say from a Leninist point of view, if you need a people's army, even older than a people's army, maybe before a people's army, we need a people's, well, a secret society. That would be the party.
I guess.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's nothing new. Maybe that's not saying anything new, but
I don't know, but like, shouldn't be afraid to make use
mhm.
of their successful tools just because they are doing it. Like maybe
Yeah,
inherently their tools aren't bad. Like
no,
they're
no,
pretty good at
they
it.
have
Why
a
not use it
weapon. I
against them?
definitely want to find it if I can use it,
Yeah,
right? There was some kind
yeah,
of point that I wanted to make about like we're
yeah.
touching on these interesting methodological issues when we talk about sort of the inside of a vessel or the box that is
Hmm.
holding a vessel, right?
Yeah,
And what's the important
yeah.
thing that you want to put on the in
Right.
the museum case, and what is the thing that
Yeah,
you
but
throw away when
it's
you say
a.
that
I
we
mean,
have?
Foucauldians and stuff. They always like to talk about like this kind of. The medium is the message, right, and things like that. And
Mm,
I don't know, like how if I fully agree with that. Like sometimes I think like, I mean, what would be the
no,
opposite? The
sometimes
opposite
it's
would
one,
be like the
sometimes it's the
message.
other. Yeah.
Yeah, like sometimes the message is the medium. Like I think rather, again, like it's like the dialectics. is more important. When at the same time, that methodology of the dialectics, choosing when is the message the medium and when is the medium the message, that it's hard to find that archaeologically speaking. You know, like we're back to the whole thing, you know how much of a conservative
you find evidence of cannibalism.
tradition.
Is this belief in the soul? Is this evidence for belief in the soul?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like I mean, and how, you know, so archaeology as a kind of like a very conservative tradition where people are like, you know, not anybody can come here and say something.
Definitely
like
people
about,
with like credentials, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's for sure. They are all like knights and stuff in the beginning, and it's like, you know, you gotta be like a general in Napoleon's army if you want to say something about Egypt. And yeah, it's like, I mean, and why is that? You know, why is it that the again, figuratively and materially, literally, whatever the keys to history, why is it that, you know, very specific people are allowed to say something about these things? And like back to this whole thing of like advanced, you know, technology, like lost Asian technology is what they call it, right? Like on the fringe. I think they are still getting it wrong, you know, like because they are still dreaming the same dream, you know. They want to be like, oh, let's break down the whole, you know, contemporary narrative of things and let's introduce something new. And you're like, yeah, man, but the technology is what we're talking about today. You know, that's still believing in the Elon Musk and the Zuckerbergs of this world. You know, you're still believing in the technocrats. You have changed nothing by saying that there is some ancient technology. What if there wasn't ancient high technology, but rather, you know, the interesting question is not, could we build the pyramids today? The interesting question is, could you afford to build the pyramids today? And the answer is no. Like definitely Egypt at least could not build the pyramids today, like in terms of social engineering, in terms of like, you know, distributing labor and acquiring resources. And, you know, economically speaking, it's impossible, which means that these people had a highly advanced method of making sure that people did what they wanted them to do. Like, I think it's even more interesting to think that the pyramids weren't built by slaves. Then it's more interesting to think that that it's the ideological state apparatus. People built the pyramids because they thought Arbeit macht frei. You know, they thought that building things are gonna make us free. And that's way more interesting than that they are slaves, you know, and that you needed a whip to do it. You know, it was the whip in the mind.
Brian Hayden says something extremely similar in his like prehistory of religion book, right? Which is written on a slightly more informal register. It's really cool. You know, he's drawing on all encyclopedic knowledge of all these archaeological sites and ethnographic data and stuff. And but writing at kind of an undergraduate level, it's really great. And he talks about, you can imagine he's drawing on his undergraduate lectures a lot. He says, so he's basically arguing against kind of functionalist explanations for things, for religion in specifically, right? See if you can get a bunch of people, you get them to believe in some kind of God or some kind of transcendent principle that wants them to pile up a bunch of heavy stones to build some kind of monument over there on the campus or something, right? I bet you can't do it. I bet you however much money. But try now to get them to believe in a system of rewards and punishments, and they can benefit from this and that. You know, you have a multi-level marketing scheme, a pyramid scheme, as it were, and then I bet you can do it. So I like the way that he points out that there has to be some kind of material reward. People have, you know, kind of self-interest in it, investment buy-in or in some way, right? But yeah, it's an ideological structure. It is an ideological structure. That's right. People aren't just building the pyramids because they believe in some high abstract metaphysics, but they're also not just being whipped, right?
Yeah.
See, in order for us to survive as a species, the way that things are happening, going ecologically these days and all the rest of that, I think our challenge is probably to find a more kind of sustainable and kind of cybernetically balanced and
yeah. I mean, you need ideology somehow, you know, like you can't just live without ideology, you know, like the Foucault, like the Fukuyama, you know, idea of like the end of history, the end of a narrative, like that's depressing, man. And it's not only depressing, it's psychotic. yeah, you can't just take away the symbolic, you know, order of a person's, you know, personal or a nation's narrative, and then think that, you know, objective reality is going to appear because we took it away. No, what you get instead
Right.
is radical psychosis, you know, because there isn't, again, these objects aren't talking, you know, they
Yeah.
you need a tale for people to in order for people to move around these objects. There's got to be
Yeah.
like a story. And even you look at like the graffiti of the stones of the pyramid, like, you know, that's on the backside that they found, you know, that were never shown to the world, like, you know, they weren't shown to anybody other than the people, the workers there.
Yeah.
What they are writing is basically like, you know, this was a great gag, you know, like this was the best gig ever. We drank
Oh, I'm
beer,
so
and
glad
there
to
was
be
like,
here.
yeah, and there was like,
Yeah.
you know, there was a festival, you know, it's like some kind of
Oh,
I
I
don't know,
didn't know about that.
Woodstock thing. And then like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like they seem, I mean, I don't know if that's all
I'm
of
so
them,
glad I get to
but
be here
still,
for
like
this
this idea
colloquium.
that, you know, that this was like a big thing that they, you know, were allowed, you know, if you don't have, you know, good artisanal bread in your hometown, and you're living in some, you know, outskirt place of Egypt, and you've never really
Yeah.
tasted beer or wine before, and then somebody's like, come on,
Yeah,
bring
yeah.
all the boys and come here, and we're
Oh,
gonna
I'm
be, you
thinking,
know,
yeah.
we're gonna be
There's
that, I
a
mean,
Muromachi monogatari called Monokusa Taro, or Lazy Taro, which is
uh-huh.
about a very eccentric, superhumanly lazy peasant who has to
Okay,
go up to Kyoto, to the capital, to do
yeah,
his local village is asked to send someone to do service in the capital for on some project or other. And
yeah,
they decide to send him, of course, because he's the legendarily lazy one. And so, but
yeah.
this turns out into this wonderful chance for him to blossom and grow. And I should take that up on the podcast sometime. You're
Yeah, yeah, you
reminding
should,
me.
should. Sounds like Liu
You.
Xun's story of Mr. A or AQ,
Oh,
like that
yeah.
guy
Okay.
who's like, who's
I
kind of
haven't read
like
it, but
lazy, and it's so funny because it's so Chinese, like where people would be like in one city, they have a one word for a bench, and then in the other city, like which is 10 minutes away, there's another word for bench, and then he's like, oh, such idiots, like why do
oh,
they
there's
call the
similar stuff
bench
in this.
like a bench?
Oh,
Yeah, and
yeah,
he's really
exactly. Like, what do you
lazy,
call a
and he's
plum?
so good at
Yeah.
like, yeah, he's like moving, you know, like a snake, like, you know, when modernity and like Western modernity is the new thing, he's like, I've always been a Western modernist, and then like when it becomes like a blowback and it's like, no, we should,
Mm.
you know, adhere to the traditional Chinese roots, he's like, definitely, that's what I've always been saying. And it's
Very dialectical
like
in a certain
yeah,
way.
yeah, for sure. You got
You
prime nose for the conditions. Yeah.
you've reminded me
Well, so
of the other kind of archaeological methodological point that I was trying to remember, and
I thought
that's
you were gonna
coming up for me.
say I remind you of the lazy worker.
Oh
But
no,
okay,
well,
yeah,
that's me too.
yeah, yeah.
That's absolutely me. Um,
The
I have
methodology.
some kind of,
Yeah,
yeah. There's all kinds of work I should probably be doing at any given time, but fuck it.
for sure.
Uh, I'm fortunate to be. There's that saying. It comes from Chinese, right? Keiko to naru mo gyugo to naru nakare. It's better to be the mouth of a chicken than the arse of an ox. Not that I'm particularly high standing in my university or anything, but just being in a
No,
sleepy place is it's kind of nice. I'm
yeah,
in a sleepy little university,
for
and I
sure,
like it
for
that way.
sure.
If I
Yeah,
was at a
you
big
should get
one,
away with
I'd
things.
have many more responsibilities and everything. But
Yeah.
I was thinking of this methodological problem of sort of what
Mm-hmm.
the history of an object,
Mm.
and what is it's a
Mm.
curatorial question. Do
Mm.
you try to return an object to some kind of original state? They initially
Mm.
started to try to do this with Greco-Roman sculpture. They tried to
Mm.
sculpt
Yeah.
arms for the Venus de Milo. They tried to put,
Okay.
replace. Oh, she lost her arms. We got to put an arm there. Okay, we'll put an
Oh.
arm.
Yeah.
Got
Okay.
to restore it. If you've got a head that is missing a nose, oh, we'll put a nose. They sculpted noses. They
Yeah.
used to do this in the 19th century.
Uh huh.
Or try
Oh,
to,
okay.
um, and that would connect to the question of, do you restore the paints? We know now what the colors are for all the
Right.
Parthenon friezes,
Mm-hmm.
right? But do we
Yeah,
choose
that
to
always
restore
freaks me
it?
out
Yeah,
when you see like the painting
yeah,
of things. Like
Yeah.
when you see like how those statues that we all know like just being plain marble, and we see them like
Right.
with paint, and
Yeah, it looks very
yeah,
garish.
like yeah,
Um,
yeah. You wonder like it's yeah.
Byodoin in
I mean
Kyoto as well. You can also see restorations of what the figures of the flying, heavenly people
hmm
originally looked like, and it's very garish. A lot of the
yeah
Japanese aesthetic is just old temples that have fallen to ruin, and that's all it is. But
yeah.
so what
Makes me think
my
of
one of my
Rashomon.
teachers. Oh, what's up?
hmm I was saying that makes me think of Rashomon. You know, when they're sitting in
No.
the at that gate, right? The monk is
Hmm.
sitting by an old gate, and it's like it's. I think that is Heian period, or is it early Kamakura? And it's always
Yeah, it
nice when
was
you have this kind
designed
of
feng shui. Speaking of feng shui,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the main gate of the feng shui, going the axis going straight north south from the front gate of the
ah,
palace,
yeah,
that goes straight down, and that's the gate leaving the capital now. But
okay,
Heian never ever filled out. They designed it to be a feng shui capital, but the whole western side of it never filled out. Only the eastern side
okay,
ended up populated. And then half
uh-huh.
of the warrior nobility, when the warrior nobility grows, you're not supposed to have arms, weapons, actual like political and the kind of secret society dynamics actually that the like inse,
Mm,
the rule by retired sovereigns, right? You would have an emperor
yeah,
who retires in favor of his abdicates in favor of his child,
oh,
young boy
that sounds like secret
successor,
society,
and then runs. And yeah, and so
retired
those
rulers.
guys, they're all tight with the warlords, and
Mm,
they're also having big parties and debauchery and so on that you can't do in the capital because that's a kind of sacred space. You can't have armies,
yeah,
no soldiers can be in the capital.
right.
So actually, the whole area outside the capital to the east becomes really de facto the sort of other
hmm
half of the capital, and that's where all the sort of secret, not secret, but just private mansions of these elite who are
Yeah,
maybe really running things, they all end up over
yeah.
there. Um,
Yeah, all those
but
old Buddhist schools as well, they become the accountants, right? Which is strange, you know, like when you think like
oh, cool.
Buddhist, like
Tell me about
yeah,
that.
like the Kamakura period schools, like they were also like the first to get connect with the foreign traders in Nagasaki
Oh,
because
sure. Yeah.
there was like like an embargo, right? Like during
Goes on.
that time, couldn't be trading between China and Japan, and so they made use. Well, the rulers of Japan and China made use of the missionaries and the Europeans, right, in order to trade between each other. But also the missionaries and the Europeans made use of the Buddhist accountants because they were like the
Ah.
most literate, and they were the ones who like were counting in numbers. You know, like if you read old sutras, it's
Mm.
filled with like esoteric numbers and like auspicious numbers and stuff. And so they
Hmm.
had like all the big daimyos would have like somebody from the Zen school or the
Hmm.
Ippen's school or Yodo Shinshu, or I guess Shingon mostly,
Ah,
right?
right,
Because it's
right.
usually considered as a aristocratic school.
That
Yeah.
would be even more
Uh,
characteristic of a slightly earlier period before the Europeans come. Taira no
yeah, it starts earlier,
Kiyomori.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Taira no Kiyomori, the sort of anti-hero of the Tale of the Heike, right? The leader of the Heike clan
I
that
don't know
gets,
this story, but yeah.
destroyed. And one of the things that he was doing was trading with China quite a lot, which
hmm
it's not quite that there was an embargo. Just traditionally in East Asia, trading is just not something that you're supposed to do in a grain state. The state is
Right.
just for producing grain,
Confucian
and
ethics is even like merchants are
yeah.
lower than peasants, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
mean, it's something that almost
yeah.
shouldn't really be happening, but it was happening. That's a big thing of that. Amino Yoshihiko always talks about. His big thing is like
Right.
we should think about hyakusho, peasants, as being not just no mean, farmers. They're not just
hmm
farmers.
Right. Yeah.
They actually were doing finance. They were doing
hmm
trading, shipping. They were doing
Yeah.
all different things that he finds.
Yeah, and then like purification of their commodities as well, like the things we usually associate with like guilds and stuff in Europe,
Hmm.
like the
Hmm.
artisanal guilds.
Yeah,
That's kind of like yeah, they did that. Like I mean, they
yeah.
would have like like work quotas and stuff, like rotational work quotas, and so it
Yeah.
wasn't like segregated in the same way. And then you also have like the pirates who were like doing a lot of like, who established the first trade connections in this area. And then
Yeah.
obviously they have their daimyo and their local warlord who they are connected to, and they are like doing the unofficial Confucian work of being
Yeah.
traders or merchants, I guess.
Someone told me long ago, there's a calm before the storm. I know it's been coming for some time. When it's over, so they say, it'll rain a sunny day. I know, shining down like water. I wanna know, have you ever seen rain? I wanna know, have you ever seen rain coming down on a sunny day? I was this issue of the history of an object seems like a really great place to kind of wrap up or whatever.
That's where we started, right? That's where Capital starts.
Yeah, yeah. So many yards of linen. There is a shrine a shrine to is it Sarasvati, the goddess of music, as Ben 10. So there's a Ben 10 do in on an island in the middle of Lake Biwa. That's that lake that's to the east of Kyoto.
Yeah.
And in that shrine, there is the shrine, the central shrine of it is actually a repurposed mausoleum to Hideyoshi's first son, who died at age 3 or something, Steimaru. And there was this restoration done on it that sort of restored, quote unquote, that shrine to the more sort of the original state of it as the tamaya, or the mausoleum of Steimaru, the son of Hideyoshi. But I have a colleague who wrote a whole book about this shrine and the way that the complicated sort of issues that raises of like curation, returning something to its original state.
Yeah.
Because and this is a perennial thing. Some of the vampire hunters, that the kind of more Abrahamically focused people around which you and I both kind of orbit in the podcasting world, perhaps, are often, they were really surprised. It's a big thing among them when they found out that Stonehenge is a restoration job. Standing those stones up in the way that they are is something that was done maybe late 19th century, and with steel, in it. And another case would be all of Japan's castles at this point. I went and visited the last standing bit of castle that is original to the Edo period. I don't think there's anything left from the actual late medieval period when these experiments were first done. In Kumamoto, I think there was one part of Kumamoto Castle.
I went to Kumamoto 2-3 weeks ago, I think.
Oh,
no, wait. Kumamoto is
Kyushu.
That's in Kyushu, right? Yeah, no, Kumano City is where I went.
Well, that's much more my old stomping grounds on the Kii Peninsula there. Okay.
Right. Fantastic. It's like the oldest, the oldest, not Shingon, Shinto, right? The oldest, Shinto,
oldest shrines. They say. Many, different places claim it, but the 3 sacred mountains of Kumano. Yeah, I totally did pilgrimages there. I did, Shugendo in those mountains.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah,
it's a nice place.
Yeah, well, but I was in that last bit of Kumamoto Castle, and then that promptly fell down in an earthquake a few weeks later. actually.
Oh, really? The one in
Yeah, I was
Kumamoto?
in there in Kumamoto. Yeah, I was in
Wow,
there a couple
cool.
weeks before it fell. But
Yeah, that's
everything
nice.
else is steel reinforced concrete. Osaka
Yeah,
Castle, Nagoya Castle, every fucking one. It's
yeah,
20th century steel reinforced
yeah,
reconstruction.
yeah,
And you know that whole castle trend there was really just based on fantastical buildings that people had seen in Chinese monochrome ink paintings, you know, landscape
yeah,
paintings.
right? Yeah,
And it
yeah.
wasn't
Which
really a
is
practical
more Taoist
building.
fantasy than anything.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly.
they weren't like
Yeah.
yeah, they werenn't impressionists
And
painting what Beijing looked like.
uh it wasn't like practical, like actual, you know, would stand up to siege warfare, you know, what is, it's a symbol of power and cultural
Yeah,
capital.
it seems often to me like those castles are like they're out of order, like out of the like the order of history. Like when you go there and look at it, and you're like, this be the easiest place to just lay a siege on it and like disallow
Yeah.
any kind of like you just wait 1 week, they're gonna come out on their own. Like you don't have
Yeah.
to rush this place or anything.
Yeah.
Then they often have this mound that is definitely more aesthetic than it is something that is gonna inhibit somebody from coming close to it.
Yeah.
And the
No, when
gardens and
you,
everything, obviously, like
yeah, when you're actually like preparing for siege warfare, you're going to see something like Castel Sant'Angelo, where you have all the angles and the crevices
yeah,
that people
right,
have to come
yeah,
into and be trapped. And
hmm,
no, no,
yeah,
I mean,
exactly, like
these are
yeah, yeah,
historically, these are warlords who had already solidified their power, and they're building these things as sort of, you know, testaments to their achieved power
yeah,
at this point as a
like the
fantastical art
predecessors.
object. Look at this fancy, fantastical thing that
Yeah.
looks like something out of a Chinese painting, right?
I was thinking, with like there's this movement like around the time of Mussolini, uh, like a kind of futurist movement, like in poetry, especially, where they are like trying to paint a really nice glorified picture of what war is like. And it is
Oh,
something similar, I think, like when you have like this second generation or third or fourth, the ancestral generations of big warlords, and they want to, you know, express in architecture what they think war is like, and what they've read in the poetry of what war is like, and they want to create something aesthetic that kind
mm-hmm.
of makes war look quite beautiful. Like I mean, it's so brutal, right? Like the whole thing, the whole I don't know. It's in the 1400, 1500, right? Like when the big samurai wars are. Yeah, and it just seems like, I mean, if you look at it with like the they live ideology glasses, and you don't have any like
Yeah,
alt-right fetishism of like what a samurai is actually like, then it just looks like brutal gang warfare, like just people just killing each other, killing their
mm,
brothers, killing their best friends, just raping and pillaging. And it's just like, how could this ever be
mm,
made to be used as some kind of ideal for anything? This should be the, if
mm,
anything, the beginning of any great golden era is what
mm-hmm.
actually they say that the medieval or the intermediate periods are supposed to be like, like this kind of anarchy. You're like, no, the anarchy comes when you start to, when you want to make an end to one of these intermediate periods and you want to do
Yeah,
something else. That's when you do what you say will happen when you are no longer there somehow,
right.
like it's
Primitive accumulation. And the intermediate periods often tend to be the most peaceful. That's you know, Amino
right.
Yoshihiko's subtitle to Muen Kugai Raku is, you know, Nihon Chusei ni okeru jiyu to heiwa, you know, freedom
Is
and
there an English
peace.
title
And
for that one?
it's only
Sorry.
been translated certain chapters into English. I think you can get those on JSTOR. I'll send them your way. I'll put them on the Discord.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the so yeah, freedom and peace in medieval Japan. Yeah, his whole thing is that, like, you know, this is a more peaceful period, and that would line up with the chapter in Against the Grain about periods of collapse being much better for most people. Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, and well, Oleg Benesh has the great book on inventing the way of the samurai, on the way that all
Okay.
was invented, brought together. There's a book
Yeah.
on Latin letters under Mussolini. I don't remember the title, but it talks about an inscription that was buried under one of those monuments you're talking about. There was like, it's like under, it's in, not in a place you can see, but it says,
Yeah.
in
It's like
Latin, sort of
spontaneous.
how what an
Yeah.
epic. We're up to some. We're doing all the epic bacon fascism here, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so
Oh, yeah.
there's this
Yeah.
question of like original, the history of an object, right? And certainly it was industrialists, and it was the most demonic kind of English people that were
Yeah.
setting up Stonehenge again, right?
Yeah. I mean, you
Which
have
is,
the
and
same
so
thing
it's not the
in
original.
the pyramids, right? Like that's the only, like, not the only one, but I really like that angle of the fringe archaeologist when they talk about, I mean, to me, advanced technology, like cogwheels, they are not that advanced. Like, I mean, but at the same time, cogwheels, you can do a lot. Like with
Oh,
cogwheels, if you have,
yeah,
if you have like the right social methods of domination, and you can make people do what you want them to do, and then if you can make
right.
those people more effective, cogwheels, definitely
Mm.
definitely something interesting. And there are these, they look like mounds, molds for some kind
Okay.
of cogwheel that are outside the
Yeah.
red pyramid, I think. That they also
Ah,
lined up.
would they have
They're
had
made
then
to look now.
automata?
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
basically what I think the fringe archaeologists are suggesting, because they are put in a context of being, sacrificial vessels by the archaeologists of the 19th century, who
Mm.
lined them up next to each other, where they were actually found as you would have found them, let's say, on a construction site, one over here and one over there, and
Huh.
that they were some kind of mold for cogwheels.
They're for
Um,
casting gears.
yeah, that's what they really do look like, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it's hard to imagine them as just blood
Yeah.
sacrificial vessels, or whatever. And yeah, I mean, that's when they do these things, they want to recreate. They are creating. They aren't just
Hmm.
recreating. They are producing something new, something that they want, and that they hope for. What those cogwheels also suggest, beyond just the technicality of it, is what we already touched upon now when we're talking about, when Amino Yoshihiko, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yoshihiko, when he talks about, like not just reading the peasants as peasants, but actually being part of a much larger um, network of specialization.
Hmm.
Like when,
Yeah. They're not
like,
only
let's say
farmers.
today, yeah, they're not only
The way
farmers,
that the
and
way that the
this,
feudal ideology sort of says they are.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right, like you are this, and
Yeah.
um, I think division of labor is something really interesting, because division of labor
Mm.
is basically how does then these old. I mean, we know that the Greeks did have steam engines, right? Like to open and close doors of the
Yeah.
of some of their temples to make it look like they
Hmm.
just did, and so the technology.
Yeah.
I mean, this has been pointed out by many.
Uh,
The technology for capitalism is already there. But what
right.
isn't there is the social aspect of it. And the social aspect of it is the
Yes.
division of labor. And
Yes.
this, how did they not, like, I don't know, like there's something different happening in Japan, like where they don't quite see this, like they don't quite see how, when you listen to, any economist today, like in a liberal, it's all about specialization. And it's all about, like, they
Uh-huh.
love it. Like, like
Uh-huh.
you do this and you're this, like it's very fascist. Like
Right.
you're
Right.
just this. And
Right.
whereas they had something else, a much more fluid kind of division of labor. Like even Lenin is
For a
against
while.
this,
Yeah.
right? In the beginning of uh, the Soviet experiment, or like, right before the
Mm.
the new the NEP, right? Before
Yeah. Yeah.
he has this long rant within the Standing People Congress. I don't know, that's a Maoist term, but I can't remember what they call it in the Soviet Union. Within the Standing People Congress, they have this kind of, Lenin is furious with these people who wants to have, one department for every single thing, and he's like, why
Okay.
do you need that? Why do you need to have, like, I am, whatever, like grain agriculturalist economist minister,
Mm.
like, why can't we have something more, we know that we need to connect, and we need to make dialectical work happen, which means that we need to interact. We can't have interpassivity. That is liberal, like you just do what you do and I just do what I do, and I don't know, like,
you have the problem of the specialist, right? The specialist,
Yeah.
that's actually very far-sighted, because if you create a class of specialists, the people with the specialized knowledge are going to very often sort of militate in undemocratic directions and unsocialist directions.
Yeah,
that
that's what
definitely
happens,
happened
right?
later. Yeah.
Somebody becomes too self-conscious of just what kind of power they are allotted, and they start to realize that other people aren't allotted the same kind of power, and at the same time there is no movement, right? Like there is too clear of a distinction in the division of labor. There's a demarcation line, which means that and isn't this kind of like Graeber's original thought in the Dawn of Everything, that these people and these early the ones of the kingless generation that you like to talk about, what doesn't happen, or like what they made, actually it is something which does happen, like that that they successfully made sure that a division of labor, a strict division of labor, couldn't take place, right? Like you had these kind of one half of the year we are sedentary and we stay in this one place, and then we go out hunting, and we leave this planned economy of gathering behind, and we do something else. And that things are
the seasonality changing. Is interesting.
Yes, the seasonality, the nature itself forces upon you to be more dynamic, if you like. That you can't have this structure forever. You gotta change with the winds. And like you said initially, I think, what was it that you said? Now it escapes me, but you did mention something about this, that when they move, when they change in their means of production, they are moving, according to our reason, they are moving back and forth in history. They are disobeying, the age of empire chronology of history as one stage leading to another stage, because they had seen it before. That's what Graeber is suggesting, that you have to recognize the political consciousness of these people, that they had seen it before. They knew what it was that they did not want to take place again, which is a kind of specialization and a strict division of labor, where, as you said, talking about Lenin, and what he also foresaw, was that some people are going to understand quickly what their allotment is, and they're going to make sure that their allotted part is increased.
Can really get this is a game here. I can get in on and get my beak wet, collect this and start to accumulate. Exactly.
And so you need some politically conscious effort, like on the most elementary level that they give an example of is like the gatherers, the hunter-gatherers in Africa. I can't remember where they are exactly, but who have this kind of shaming ritual of making sure that people who are really good hunters shouldn't think that they are all that. Like we can get by. We can get by without the meat. That
happens in southern Africa sometimes.
Like I mean, and that's so necessary. We think of it as maybe something banal, but no, like even Marx talk about that, right? Like when he talks about what does it actually mean to inscribe on the banner, from each according to their need, from each according to their ability to each according to their need. What he's talking about is a kind of social back and forth about what is the value of this, what is the value of that, that it is not only like what is it that I get wrong, like on the market, right? Like where I mean, that is the peak of the division of labor, where there's a foreign, all conscious, omnipotent entity that's, we assume, knows the value of all things. And it has this kind of, like Lacan called it, like the perspective of the latter days or something, like this it's not only like utilitarian, because utilitarian would be use value, strictly speaking, in economics, which isn't what the market is about, right? So there's got to be something bigger than the utilitarianism of the bourgeoisie. It's got to be this, finally, well, in the judgment of the latter days, there is this entity called the market who did know what things were worth. But Marx, points out that, like, well, it just tells you when something has gone above it and when something has gone below it. Who said initially what it was in the first place? What is the position that it went above and what is the position that it went below? And of course, we know, like, it has something to do with labor. But labor is a social term because it's like, how hard do you think that this is? Like in Swedish, we have so many words for,
socially necessary labor time.
We have so many words for, like, what work is, that it's suggested already. Labor doesn't it sounds neutral in English, but we have, like, job and jobbigt. Jobbigt means that something is annoying or that something is, that it's a burden on you. But one person might think that jobbigt is something else because, they're well equipped or they fancy doing that. We are different, right?
The other day, I just finally learned the Japanese term for the gig economy, which is job economy.
Job economy.
The job economy, because part-time work, so part-time they call Arbeit, right? So
right, the German word, which is
Arbeito.
Why is
German
it
word in English pronunciation, actually, Arbeito.
This is not really what division of labor is, I think. Like, that you think that something is hard work, and I think, I quite fancy doing that. Let's say, let's something that you really like to do.
If you're a silkworm, spinning silk is just what you do. It's a natural gift of nature that comes out of you naturally.
And on a social level, we would say, well, the really starry-eyed would say, like, that has something to do with divine inspiration, which we usually associate with artists, right? Like that, I really do like painting, whereas a person who's an accountant would hate painting because he doesn't know how to do it, and he would feel burdened with doing that. Whereas he might have some Asperger or some autistic spectrum inclination to really figure out numbers, and then it would be good that he does that. But division of labor doesn't take this social consideration into account, right? It just assumes that maybe it will be like that you do what you ought to do and you do what you ought to do. I mean, of course, on the fascist level, they don't only hope for it, they try to write it in, as a kind of destiny, right? Like the old Confucian tradition in China is to give a character name to a person that has something to do with what you're supposed to do. Like the ultimate destiny is to follow the meaning of your character, that is your name. Right. But
it's nice that you can always change the characters of your name too later on to fit the fact. They'll fudge it later if it doesn't work. But
right. You picked the wrong thing at that ceremony when you were a kid, and you were supposed to pick the brush or the wallet, and then it's like, oh, right, fuck, he picked the brush.
Exactly.
But division of labor isn't the social consideration of what you feel like doing. I don't know how to put it, but it's something else. It's something superimposed that just want to make sure, I think, that there isn't collaboration. I don't know what does the anarchists really like to use the mutual aid term, right? Which I mean, it's a good term, I think, but the division of labor is like the antithesis of that. It's like you.
Well, there's got to be. I bet there's a whole field. and it doesn't. I would, because when in terms of revolutionary strategy, for quite a while, you're not going to be able to just the day after the revolution say, okay, everybody doesn't have to do anything they don't feel like doing anymore.
Yeah, that wouldn't work either.
No, you're going to have some kind of period of building socialism necessarily under some kind of discipline, and then of course historically it's always been about battling the tendency toward capitalist restoration, right? Restoration of class society. However, people do figure these things out, and I wish I could be a Dungist. I can't quite manage it, but
man, don't get me started on the Dungist,
but still, I mean, it's at least really, really good You know who I can really maybe get behind almost unreservedly is the many, many smaller actually existing decolonial socialist projects that are
Yeah.
benefiting so much from the multipolarity and the space that is being opened up by America's retreat from the
Mm-hmm.
from global
Yeah.
hegemony, unipolar global hegemony, right? And
Yeah.
whatever the nature of Russia and China or India, these other countries that might be pushing America off the stage in that way or edging on as well,
Mm.
those little guys that are having space opened up to do all kinds of things that they've always been trying to do, that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really happy
It
to see
is.
that.
I mean, yeah, because there is also like, the structure. I mean, I don't, I think what, the anarchists might get wrong in the idea of like mutual aid is the negligence of structure, because structure does make sure that at least, you don't have to go out and find like the counterpart of your labor, like the buyer, right? It's already
Yeah.
put into place. And so, let's say you do know what you want to do and you do that. Well, the next step is
Yeah.
then to make sure that there's somebody on the receiving end, right? Whereas a structure would allow for that. Like, and it doesn't have to be, well, it's something like a market, but it's also like, insofar that the market did exist, of course, before there was class society, like there's been barter and there's been, other, and there's,
games,
of course,
gambling
like
games that circulate shells and things across continents, right?
Right. And then there's so much more, we shouldn't eliminate all the social interaction in these things just because we want to feel, that we didn't get ripped off. That's what the market does for the ego, I think, like fundamentally, that it doesn't hurt your narcissism because you can be like, well, I know what this is actually worth, Whereas socially speaking, it's part of, something more like a story, or like you said just now, like a game. Somebody won because were good at something completely unrelated. Let's say, putting a bowl into a hoop or something. But, why not allow that kind of stochasticism into the determining of the value of the object?
Maybe a paleo-Leninist socialist transition could proceed on the basis of a robust ecosystem of competing secret societies forms, trade guilds of various things, people who paint, people who, whatever.
Yeah.
And they would have festivals to compete and, can have certain kinds of competition among them. Competition that ultimately serves to dissipate energies of accumulation and division of labor.
Like dissing the one who is proud and things like that, or like, maybe dissing the one who has the most and being like, well, you have the most, but you have the most of that which is least worth. Or, like, there's nothing exclusive about the things that you have. I mean, that's my, I don't know, I think that's my most guilty pleasure to imagine that like when like planned economy, like the initial like pre-class society, like I want to imagine that there was some, Graeber and them talk about it, but they don't use the word natural farming, like, so because I'm a natural farmer, so I like to believe that there was something, like I already talked about it with the Aborigines and how they domesticated landscapes, right? That there was some kind of planned economy in association with what we will later call agriculture or farming, but which was a kind of, it didn't involve domestication, but rather it must have been something that was very mobile. And I don't know, like there's one fringe archaeologist in South Africa he's batshit crazy most of the times. Like, he believes in giants and things like that. But he has drawn attention to one really interesting thing, which is something that he calls the Adams calendar. And the Adams calendar, I don't know if you heard about that. Like, there's a lot of talk, like on the fringe archaeology in that world about what the Adams calendar is. The assessment of how old it is, I thought it was pretty sound, because there is one stone where a chip of that stone has fallen off and it's lying right next to it. which means that the stone must have been put up before that stone fell off it, right? Like otherwise somebody would have taken both the chip and the stone and then put it next to it just to make it look like that, which is, you know, I find that hard to believe. And they've done two different kind of methods of then assessing the age by measuring the what do you call that kind of mushroom in English?
Dating?
The ones that no, not carbon dating. The mushroom that grows on stones, you know,
lichen?
Lichen, yeah.
Lichen.
The lichen regrowth, in the area where the chip would have been. They used that to determine the age, and they've also used the general sedation due to weather of that stone kind. And they've estimated that this calendar is probably between 25,000 years old or maybe as old as 75,000 years old. And I'm like, okay, that opens up a really long period of like, how long was the period that people were playing around with the idea of agriculture, but still not yet domesticating things? And where they still, you know, relied upon it in terms of like a planned economy, and they were walking around and they were, you know, guiding their, you know, it wasn't just mindless wandering around finding some berries here or some berries there. I mean, they were pretty good at like, you know, calculating when we should be in one place and when we should get away from that one place. And also, I would imagine that you have some kind of division of labor, since they're in the world of, you know, of growing things. There is such a huge spectrum of like, you know, fruits and perennials and annuals and you know, herbs and vegetables and so I would imagine that, you know, some people must have considered themselves, you know, in our society we really like bananas, or you know, in our society we really like gourds of different kinds, or you know, we are people who really like berries of various sorts. And I think what, you know, this sounds very sublime and very sophisticated, but the thing is that these calendars, and he had made some kind of assessment of like how many there could be in South Africa by simply using Google Maps. And it's supposed to be like the official archaeological explanation is that these lithic structures are the foundations of herd encampments during the 1600 by some pastoralist community that went to South America. I can't quite remember who they were, but they don't really look like what, you know, these herders encampments for cattle look like today, which, you know, aren't made with stone at all. And they also structurally don't, you know, that doesn't make any sense. The thing is, sure, they could have been that, but, you know, then it could be because they reused something that they didn't understand. Like the pastoralists don't care as much about the calendar that the planned economist of agriculture or natural farming once cared about. And so they have made use of like this old structure. And here's the odd thing, like talking about something sublime then, you know, when you want to start thinking about, you know, well, what was the story that they told themselves about, you know, the movement of the stars and this kind of, you know, the proto ideology of things, you know, from which all religions come from, I think, at least, you know, that they must have been looking at the stars and they had a calendar and they could recognize the movement of a certain star over thousands of years. And you know, that gave credit to their own lineages as people. Now, these calendars, they are all made on gold mines. Today, we find that they are all positioned on gold mines, which, you know, makes me think that, you know, why, you know, I know that, for example, one thing is interesting that, you know, when you, in areas where there are gold mines, different things grow because you have something, for example, colloidal silver. I can't remember, colloquial silver, that I know that cannabis growers really like because you can use it to make feminized seeds, for example. And so metal plays a big role, like in how things grow. But I would also suggest maybe that maybe they knowingly put their calendars on top of gold mines, not because, as we today think of gold as a means of exchange, or value later in the, you know, or value in the terms of maybe some also use value in terms of jewelry, but that they still put value into it. but in terms of like knowledge, right? Like that these calendars would have been gathering points where we speak gold to each other, and we tell you like, go that direction for 2 years. You're going to be finding some, there's going to be a nice trail of, semi-cultivated, food forests that we've been setting up. And, we would like to explore a little bit what you've been doing down there in the south. And they will share that and tell them like how to move and what landmarks to look for in their exploration and their journey. And I don't know, like that, if that is what division of labor is in the social idea. Yeah.
In the best possible sense.
To me, that is the best possible sense of these places being temples and universities and stockpiles of golden information of how to find forward movement for your planned economy.
All right. You reminded me, I had that's fantastic. I had a science teacher who once taught me, I think, that lichen is actually a plant and a fungus living together and liken it. This little joke. No, it seems to be like a compound organism, like a Portuguese man-o-war or something. It's actually two things living in symbiosis.
Don't get me started on the symbiosis of fungus and like microbiology, because it's like it's like that's
maybe we'll save that for next time.
Yeah,
maybe we'll save that for next time. I'm so grateful for your taking time away from your baby, and my apologies to your family.
I should be fine.
I hope we can do this again soon.
Yeah, I loved being on your show, man. I liked it. I really like listening to you. And now it's like the Kobayashi that I left for a while, because I've never met anybody who's read Kobayashi. I really like the Kanikosen story.
Well, I'm not an expert on that by any means, but I'm very interested.
But still,
there's more. Kuroshima Denji is one that I want to bring in pretty soon. Yeah, right. I can't decide what I should do next. I suppose
Is that available in English?
Yeah. There's A Flock of Swirling Crows. It's about the Siberian.
It's like an anthology.
It's an anthology of short stories, and the story that it's named after, it takes place in the Siberian invasion of Japan, right? Which lasted the longest, and they were snooping around looking for oil, right? At the same time that they were invading in support of the White Russians against the Bolsheviks in the Russian Revolution.
Yeah.
Very opposite kind of monumentality, finding buried oil versus what you were talking about.
There's one native people up there. It's not the Ainu. It's one like who lives in the Hokkaido, and I think it's a little bit eerie, because I looked at like official Japanese statistics, and one of there was like a pretty consistent taking of accounts of how many of these people existed. Because they were also recognized by the Soviet Union. And so they had to be counted by Japan. And then suddenly in 1989, there's no more records of these people, because they no longer had the imperative of the Soviet Union to account for how many of them there were, which makes me think, what happened to them? Yeah. No, but thank you so much. Thank you so much for
and welcome. I guess sort of like, should I say welcome to Japan? You are, like a China wanderer. Come here, and by chance you have come to perhaps a much worse country to be in the near future, I should think. But
maybe
that.
Well, I
wish you all the
speak
best
Chinese,
for your
so. If something happens, to just go back to the motherland,
you can just talk to them when they come,
Yeah, exactly. Get out of it.
Well, it's good to be in the countryside. I envy you that. I look for next time, maybe you can say more about Pure Land Buddhism, about Chinese things. We'll have a lot to talk about.
Shisen Noho, and like how I connect Pure Land Buddhism to farming. And
absolutely.
Hopefully by the next time I will have started, maybe my farm. We're looking at a place now, as I told you in the beginning, in Shino, And I'm really looking forward to grow like some of the ancient grains. You know, we hate upon the
Yeah.
you know, the grain society, but I'm thinking, you know, fight fire with fire, and I'm gonna
No,
grow the
these are
old
the
pharaoh
ones.
grains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awa, Kibi. I mean, the different kinds of millet. There's all different kinds of
Oh,
millet that were not subject to taxation. So that would be a kind of resistance grain, actually, that peasants would be cultivating for
oh.
times of
Yeah,
scarcity.
I have some millets
Yeah.
coming up. In Swedish, we call millet corn,
Cool.
which
Okay.
sounds like corn,
Oh,
but
okay.
it means pebble of grain. I think like
Yeah.
it's like a unit of measurement. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I would get some evolutionary strains of millet, definitely, and then the other ones like einkorn and spelt and emmer and durum, and
Hmm.
see what I can
Awesome.
do. And then you can get some nice, you know, artisanal flour later, and you can do some
I can't
sourdough
wait.
bread or something maybe. Yeah.
All right. So that was a fantastic, wide-ranging conversation. Quite a seminar, a session, a little seance there with Marcus. Thanks again to Marcus. Marcus is also, I mean, he mentioned that he made his way across China painting temple walls of Buddhist temples. And he also has kindly done some new album art for this podcast. So check that out. You'll see this lovely new image. And that is thanks to Marcus as well. He has painted my temple wall. Check out his podcast, The Return of the Repressed. I think Spotify is where I can find that these days. And check it out. He has a Patreon as well. So check that out. If you're not a member of the Kingless Generation, head on down to patreon.com/irregnata. That's unruled in Latin, feminine singular. And for a low, low price, you can get access to the Discord. Historical materials mentioned in this episode and in many other episodes are actually up there in ways that don't break copyright law, I promise. I'm pretty sure. So head on down. Come on in. The water's fine. I'm Fergal Schmoodlock, and I have anointed you with the anointing of the Kingless Generation. There's a place up ahead and I'm going just as fast as my feet can fly. Come away if you're going. Leave the sinking ship behind. Come on the rising wind. We're going up around the bend. Ooh. Bring a song and a smile for the banjo. Better get while the getting's good. Hitch a ride to the end of the highway where the neons turn to wood. Come on the rising wind. We're coming up around the bend. Ooh.